Hello everybody, thank you for coming today and welcome to the Energy Storage Masterclass. Today's event has been hosted by the Australian Solar Council and the Energy Storage Council, and the Energy Storage Masterclass presentation will be presented by Supply Partners. The presentation will be done by both myself, I'm Liam Ricketts, and Dane Muldoon. Just a quick overview of the agenda we're going to cover today. First of all, I'm just going to touch on some housekeeping and give you a little bit of information about our company, Supply Partners. Then we're going to move on to a presentation from Dane on technology and solutions. And then following that, I'm going to give a presentation on sales training. Then we've actually got some really good presentations from our expert panel. We have GMB Exide, Bosch and LG Chemical giving presentations on their current products and exciting products coming out in 2016. That'll follow a Q&A with the expert panel, and then we'll do a conclusion where we'll do a bit of a product focus. So just on the housekeeping, the emergency exits are on both sides of the front of the stage here. The toilets are pretty much straight behind the wall here if you need to exit for the toilets. Can you please ensure that you have your mobile phones on silent? Now, we do have feedback forms under everybody's chair, so they're very important today. We're going to cover a lot of ground quite quickly in 2 hours. So if we don't cover anything you have a question about, or you haven't had a chance to ask that question, please ensure you write the question on the Q&A form, and we'll be sending the questions and answers to everybody who's attended the 4 events and also to the broader market. And further to that, we'll be providing all those questions and answers to the expert panel, and that'll help these manufacturers further develop their products better for the Australian market. So we've also got a competition we're running today, so by filling out that Q&A form, you will be in the competition to win a SunGrow hybrid inverter and an LG lithium battery worth over $7,500. You'll also see under your chair a small Contact Us form, which shows you the brands we distribute as a company and how to get in contact with one of our direct account managers or our office for pricing or stock orders. So the slides will be emailed to everybody, so if you haven't had a chance to take notes on some of the slides, we will be emailing it to everybody who's attended the 4 events. So first of all, just to introduce our company, Supply Partners, we're a renewable energy and energy efficiency wholesale and distribution company, and we distribute nationally across Australia. We're a well-capitalised and financially stable business. We offer trade-insured credit accounts and STC trading for stock. And we also provide strong technical support. So we're not just a box mover distributor. And that's one strength we're really finding is setting us apart from the rest of the distributors in the market, where we have strong technical support, which you'll understand a bit more about today in our presentations. So our range of products, we distribute products from some of the largest manufacturers within the industry. We distribute PV modules, inverters, racking, batteries, and commercial solutions. And all our manufacturers have strong Australian-based warranty support. We don't distribute products for any manufacturers that don't have Australian-based warranty support. So I'll now hand over to Dane Muldoon. Dane's going to give you the technical training. So I hope you enjoy. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you very much for your time. I'm going to take a look at a few aspects of the energy storage market, starting with some of the battery technologies. I think when people think energy storage, they rightly, leap immediately to the batteries that are at the heart of that. But of course, that's not the entire solution. So we'll also take a look at hybrid inverters and energy storage systems, which are effectively new products to the market that we haven't seen before. And we'll also look at some trends. And I think in terms of trends, the most interesting one in my mind is the fact that this is consumer-led, in so much as I would expect every single person in this room has people asking them, potential customers, but also even friends and family, tell me about energy storage. And that's different. It's different in so much as I remember talking to people maybe 6 years ago about PV before it really got big and boomed and all the rest of it. And some people were actually just surprised and almost disbelieving that I could sell them a system and I would put these panels on their roof and they would make electricity and it would reduce their bills. And they were like, no, this can't be right. That makes no sense to me. I do not believe you. Now, of course, that's obviously changed. And the wider community now genuinely understands the value proposition of solar power. And in fact, I think that that value proposition these days, given the strong solar resources we have, given the way the price of components has come down, is so strong that people are thinking to themselves, hey, I love solar. I've got some, or I'm planning to get some. It's fantastic. Everyone has good stories about it. Well, hopefully, good stories about it. How can I get more of it? Can I get more panels? Can I store the power? Can I use the power, etc.? So consumer-led is a very, very important trend to be aware of. In the past, we've had battery manufacturers, or battery inverter manufacturers involved in this industry, but the battery manufacturers themselves are getting involved now, which is very interesting. And of course, as a trend, everyone can sort of see it coming. That's why you're all here, I guess. But when will it get here exactly? So let's take a look at some of the battery technologies that are either popular in the market today or emerging or perhaps coming soon. Obviously, lead acid is the stalwart of the energy storage industry, and these lead acid cells have been around a long time, very well proven in the field. A few different flavours available in flooded, AGM and gel. New variations are coming, and the R&D on lead acid technology hasn't finished, hasn't stopped. So an example, graphite batteries, which we're starting to see emerge. Certainly because they've been around for such a long time, the compatibility with existing inverter charger equipment is very good. Large installations, many kilowatt hour installations are supported, which makes them a very good fit for UPS and off-grid. Lithium, obviously another battery technology. It's a real buzzword these days. I even saw a couple of gentlemen wearing shirts with lithium written right on the back. There have been some concerns around safety, and I think as an industry, we need to recognise those concerns and make sure that we're dealing with them. But I don't think that's going to stop lithium in terms of uptake in the market. Everyone pretty much has one in their pocket right now, powering their mobile phone. Keep in mind with lithium batteries, there's a degree of compatibility required between the battery and the inverter charger that we haven't had to worry about or concern ourselves with previously with lead acid batteries. So make sure that even if you have a particular battery or a particular inverter charger you want to use, that these products actually work together and the manufacturers support that. Another thing that's a bit different, lithium versus the lead acid technologies, is the need for a battery management system. This electronic component is a key component in the overall reliability and frankly safety of lithium batteries. So make sure that you're well aware of who has delivered that BMS, perhaps the battery manufacturer themselves, which is probably ideal, and that it's designed to really work well in the field, not just in the lab. Certainly some benefits with lithium: higher power densities, lighter weight, generally deeper depth of discharge and high cyclic life. And we've got some high voltage DC options coming. That's a new thing that we haven't really seen before, but I'll touch on that a bit later. Flow batteries. I think a lot of people in the industry have heard of this as a concept, or certainly heard of Redflow as a manufacturer. Obviously local here to Brisbane, just over in 17 Mile Rocks. Redflow in particular has recently moved from the R&D stage to the commercialisation stage and are having the units built by Flectronics. The units themselves, the overall batteries, are actually made up of individual components that can be serviced, so you can extend the cell's life, which is interesting because normally You don't expect to open a battery up and sort of reach inside. The energy can be stored almost indefinitely once the liquids are charged and held apart. But more of an energy battery than a power battery. The distinction there being the battery in your car you can think of as being a power battery. It's designed to deliver a lot of power very, very quickly. That's not really what we want for our industry most of the time. We want the ability to store many kilowatt hours, perhaps charge slowly over the course of the day from PV, and then discharge that relatively slowly as well. Of course, as soon as you're dealing with any kind of liquid, you have to have pumps to move the liquids about, and the pumps themselves require electricity to run. So there is a degree of parasitic losses with flow batteries that perhaps, if you're not familiar with them, you might not take into account in your equations. Another Australian developed battery, this one came out of CSIRO research, now being manufactured by a company called eColt, combines lead acid battery technology with an ultracapacitor. This is an example when I say that lead acid battery technology continues to be improved and new ideas are coming to market. Reportedly a higher efficiency in partial state of charge than traditional lead acid batteries. There's a residential product coming to market shortly with 11 kilowatt hours of usable energy. I think that is well sized for the residential market. Keep in mind though, quite heavy, and so you need to be careful where you position it and the way you move these things around. Quickly, an example of a salt battery is from manufacturer Acquion. They have 2 kilowatt stacks and reputedly a very high cyclic life and depth of discharge. Also good in high temperature regions, I've been told. Also large and heavy, but that's not surprising. We just have to wait and see if they can get the volume to bring the price down over time. I think that's a key consideration in all of this, because everybody that I've spoken to is interested in energy storage, but has this notion maybe the price is a little bit too high at the moment. If the price can come down, I'm sure that we'll be able to increase the volume of sales in the industry. So we need to look at technologies that have the ability or have the capacity to achieve those volumes to bring that price down. Overall, fantastic that there's new batteries hitting the market, new technologies being developed. I'm sure if I were to give this same presentation in 12 months' time, I could easily fit another couple of slides in there that are not there today. I'd suggest it's way too soon to be picking winners or losers. And what I mean by that is, if you went back 5 or 6 years with PV modules, we had a variety of thin film modules, we had 5 and 6 inch polycrystalline cells. We had probably as many, if not more, monocrystal panels on the market than poly. In other words, we actually had more variety. We had more types and variety of panels on the market than what we have today. And what that tells me is that there's been a degree of consolidation, and a 60 cell module using 6 inch polycrystalline cells has been the industry's discovered that is a very good shape and size, and it works in many, many applications, and perhaps not everywhere and every time, but enough of the time that that's the volume product, and we do not have as many other panels on the market or varieties of panels on the market today. So with batteries, too early to pick winners and losers yet, although I do expect that there will be a consolidation over the next 5-10 years. But your customers actually want you to pick winners. And that makes it difficult for everybody in this room, because they're looking at you as an expert. They perceive you to be experts in solar technology. Energy storage is just seen as like an addition or extra knowledge set on top of standard solar technology. So people want you to pick winners, and that can make things difficult. So what to do? Well, I can't tell you what to do. I can only suggest what I do, and I like to look at where the money's going. Who is building new manufacturing capacity? Which companies are building new factories and ramping up and going big? Who's partnering with other companies who themselves are large? For example, some of the car manufacturers. And overall, what technology is going to have the opportunity to achieve economies of scale? So moving on, having a battery is not enough to deliver a system, of course. I've got 3 different types of approaches for managing those batteries that I'd like to go through with you today. First of all, traditional off-grid. Now, what I mean by this is simply there are companies who manufacture battery inverters who've been doing this for a long time. The off-grid market is a market that's been in Australia for a very long time. In fact, my father was using square wave inverters way back in the 80s to do off-grid systems. And square wave inverters, if you haven't run into them, have this tremendous ability to destroy anything electronic. So it's wonderful that we have, pure sine wave inverters these days. The battery inverter manufacturers that have been in this industry for so many years have lots of systems in the field, and they have proven themselves to be highly reliable. And that's obviously a key consideration in off-grid. Also, these manufacturers tend to be able to build systems of all different shapes and sizes, single phase, 3-phase, etc., etc. But training's definitely required to do a good job with these manufacturers. Now, when I say traditional off-grid, I'm not suggesting that their products aren't perfectly suited for on-grid operation, and that's primarily what we're talking about today, simply to explain that's where they've come from. A couple of examples. I'm sure you're familiar with all 3 of these, Schneider, SMA and Selectronic. People involved in the off-grid space often choose one of these 3 to build their systems out of. Hybrid inverters and batteries. Now, this is a category that's basically new. You go back a few years, there was no such thing as a hybrid inverter. And what I'm suggesting here is that this is an inverter where we've taken solar management, the solar inverter function, and battery management, the battery inverter charger function, and effectively merged it all together and put it into one enclosure. This tends to be, from what I've seen, the products so far have come from manufacturers who have, in the solar inverter space, wanting to enter the energy storage space. And then we have even a newer breed of product, hybrid batteries, which actually take the battery bit, the actual storage of the energy, and combine into that one enclosure the ability for that unit to charge and discharge itself. And an example is Enphase's upcoming AC battery, where in the one enclosure you've got the battery storage, but it just plugs into AC and it will do the inversion and the charging for you. So a couple of examples, SunGrow and SolarX both make quite popular single-phase hybrid inverters. And we're also seeing some other products come through, such as the SolarWatt MyReserve, which you'll hear a little bit more about later, and the Tesla Powerwall. And then thirdly, energy storage systems. And so we've gone from basically having 3 major components. With the traditional off-grid manufacturers, we've got the solar inverter, the battery inverter, and the batteries. And these are separate. And then with the hybrid systems, we've got the hybrid inverter and the batteries. So sort of 2 things. And now with energy storage systems, 1 thing. Everything's in the one box. You've got your solar inverter, your batteries there. And this is more of an appliance approach. And I think customers can be easily confused, in my experience, and they're easily confused even by kilowatt hours and kilowatts and solar. Once we get into batteries, it potentially gets even more confusing, and confusion equals you're probably not going to make the sale. So we need to be mindful of that. I think having one box with one badge on the front certainly keeps things simple in the customer's mind. The flip side is that you have less flexibility with the configurations that are possible generally with these products. A couple of examples, Samsung have an all-in-one, and Bosch has had a range over the last couple of years. So lots of enthusiasm, lots of interest in energy storage. Let's take a quick reality check though. So what are the strengths that we have? Well, I think consumer-led demand, I think, is number one. The fact that people want it, even perhaps before we're ready to give it to them or deliver it to them, is incredible. New solutions, new technologies, falling prices, and a strong industry, much stronger industry than what we had at the start of the solar boom. Weaknesses? Well, ROI is definitely not as strong as solar, and I think there is an expectation in the community these days of what solar should be worth, therefore what battery systems should be worth as well. Perhaps that expectation isn't in line with reality, but we need to work around it. Opportunities? Well, perhaps we can actually partner with the networks this time. It's been a bit us and them over the last few years with solar. It'd be nice to sort of work more closely with them. We're ready if they are, so we'll have to see who comes to the table. And threats, look, I think we've all seen issues with some substandard products, some substandard installations, DC isolator recalls being a classic example. We do need as an industry to be sure that we overcome that and we get these systems installed correctly the first time so nobody has any problems, because the simple fact is that batteries can be dangerous if they're not installed correctly, or even, I guess, if they're not managed correctly. And in the case of lithium batteries, at least that's where the BMS is so important. So a note on battery safety, the CSIRO in conjunction with the CEC actually released a report on this very recently, 24th of November. These are the 6 recommendations. I'm not going to go through them. Keep in mind that we're supplying these slides to everybody via email, but I do encourage you, if you want to see what that report says, then look it up. Quick comment about battery ready. This is a bit of a bugbear of mine. I see different people talking about how things are battery ready. For example, it's a solar inverter. I could put a battery inverter next to it, therefore it's battery ready. I think that's a bit disingenuous. I don't think that's really what the customer's expectation is. So just be careful the way you position a battery ready solution. Another one, manufacturer also makes a battery inverter. I think that means that you're closer. Or you have a hybrid inverter, but it does require extra hardware for battery management. I think it means you're closer again. Or you have a hybrid inverter and there's actually battery management built in, I think is probably the best or truest definition of battery ready. So what if your customer already has batteries? There's lots of solar customers out there these days. And I think that's where, in fact, a lot of the inquiry is coming from. Should you replace their existing system, add to their existing system? Well, we'll go through a couple of options at least so you're aware of them. Just a note, watch out on the older systems. Keep in mind that depending on the age, it might have been installed under a different level of standards, and there may be a requirement for you to bring, say, the array, the PV array, up to the current standards. So just be careful about that one. A couple of different approaches. Adding a battery inverter. We've covered a few manufacturers there. Have a look at the compatibility. If you have, for example, a Schneider solar inverter and you're putting a Schneider battery inverter next to it, that should be fine. You might need to upgrade some firmware along the way. If it's not like for like, then it might be worthwhile talking to the manufacturer about that. Replace existing solar inverters with a hybrid or with an ESS. I think that's probably going to be the most common approach, frankly. Whether that's a good thing or not, maybe some of these inverters we're going to replace are actually perfectly fine. Does that mean we're going to have a thriving second-hand inverter industry? Possibly. And then other solutions. I'm sure that there's probably things I would have put in this presentation if I knew about it, but I just don't know about it because it's only just happened. So it's certainly a very dynamic market. There's a lot of products coming to the market all the time. Keep your ear to the ground. In terms of perhaps replacing something that's already there, perhaps offer a cashback. I've certainly seen that work to good effect in the hot water industry. So let's have a quick look at these. If we put in place a battery inverter, we can do so adjacent to the existing solar inverter, and that's where we install our batteries. Benefit here is that battery inverters are designed originally or essentially for off-grid use. So the ability to deliver power in blackout is typically very strong with those products. Or we could just remove the existing solar inverter and whack in a hybrid inverter, or perhaps a hybrid battery, which does mean we do not need to touch the existing solar inverter. So that's an interesting approach where the battery is in line with the PV modules. Or perhaps another one, remove the inverter, put in an energy storage system. So you've got someone who wants batteries. What's the right size in terms of capacity? I think you really need to understand what their consumption levels are, as well as what the existing solar system is producing. Consumption monitoring is very helpful because it allows you to reconcile what they're consuming versus what the solar is producing. In our office over in Sumner, we have a couple of systems installed which allows us to sort of take a look at consumption monitoring and that type of thing. One of the systems is a Sungrow hybrid inverter connected to an LG Chem battery. We also have a SolarX connected to actually the same battery. We share it between the two, and that allows us to take a look at reports and see how things are going, etc., etc. I'm not going to go through these particular graphs in detail, but there's some interesting stuff in there. So when you get the slides, perhaps take a closer look. Changing gears a little bit here. We've been talking about on-grid primarily. Let's have a chat about off-grid. So what do we lose when we go off the grid? Well, the grid provides effectively infinite kilowatt hours to the customer. So we obviously need to supply all of their energy requirements, but the grid also provides massive instantaneous power. So we do need to look not only at just the kilowatt hours, but also what their peak demands are. And if you've sat through any Energex or Ergon presentations, you'll appreciate how important utilities consider peak demand. So some of the standard components you can expect to find in a typical off-grid system, something to manage the solar, something to manage the batteries themselves, somewhere to put the batteries. Batteries generally are not IP-rated devices, so they've got to go somewhere out of the weather. Backup generator, some way to start the backup generator. Remote monitoring, this is, I think, very important and a huge time saver potentially. Some of these off-grid systems obviously are a long way out, hours and hours, hundreds of kilometres. And in this day and age of the internet, if that customer has a problem and you're able to actually dial into their system and take a look and do some troubleshooting, you might be able to identify they've just blown a fuse and send them a new one in the post, and you didn't have to get out of your chair. So if you're doing off-grid and you're serious about it, definitely put in the remote comms. Here's an example of a system using Schneider components. You can see that unlike a standard PV system, which just has panels and an inverter, there's a bit going on here. A couple of concepts that come up in off-grid, or just batteries generally. Depth of discharge, that diagram there showing that the battery at 100% is completely charged. If we were to discharge 25% and then charge it back up to 100%, that's called 25% depth of discharge. Going down to half and back up to full, 50%, etc., etc. C1, C10, C100 numbers. Think of this as being analogous to fuel economy in a car. When you buy a car, it'll give you both in the city and on the highway fuel economy number. What that means is if you have a full tank of fuel and you just do city driving, you can expect to go a certain number of kilometres. If you have a full tank of fuel and you do highway driving, you can expect to go further because highway driving is considered to be more efficient. Well, in the terms of extracting energy from a battery, doing it more slowly over a longer period of time, you can think of as being more efficient. So C100 means discharging the battery over 100 hours. Now, that may not be realistic in day-to-day use, but C100 is a number you'll find commonly on battery data sheets. So it's important to understand what that is. C10, I think, is a better number to be basing your calculations on, but the amount of energy you can expect to get out of a battery in 10 hours is less than what you can expect to get out in 100 hours. And then C1 is something that was never really around in the days before lithium batteries, but we do see it popping up now with lithium batteries. Voltage and amp hours, very simply put, it's a multiplication to give watt hours or kilowatt hours. Keep in mind that this is gross capacity before we start taking into account our depth of discharge. And cyclic life is simply how many cycles those batteries are expected to live for. And generally, cyclic life is until the battery can hold only 80% of its original capacity. This is certainly a number that 80% is something that should be familiar with people, because with solar panels, we have something very similar. We've got performance warranties around having the panels produce at least 80% after 25 years. Here's just a quick example. You can see if you have 48-volt battery and you discharge it over 100 hours, you're going to get a certain number of usable kilowatt hours. If you discharge at 50%, you discharge it more, then you will get more energy out of it, but the cyclic life reduces because you're working the battery harder. Battery inverters, just a quick comment, versus solar inverters, generally 2 AC outputs, not 1. You have to make sure your battery voltage matches up with whatever battery you're planning to use. IP rating, usually not IP65. So keep in mind that you're going to have to find somewhere out of the weather for this thing. And hugely configurable, hundreds of parameters oftentimes. And also impacted by temperature. This is key because a lot of these off-grid systems obviously are out in hot environments. So for example, what it can deliver at 25 degrees Celsius is actually not as high as what, it's higher rather, than what a battery inverter will be able to deliver at 40 degrees Celsius. Just another one that comes up in off-grid systems that we don't usually see in grid-connected solar systems is MPPT charge controllers for DC coupling. Just means that we can basically take the DC straight off the panels, convert it down typically to 48 volts, and charge the batteries directly. So what do you need to know? Certainly how many kilowatt hours you're planning to use and how many kilowatt hours you might need in the maximum case, but also what the peak demand might be. The solar resource available is largely dependent on where in the country we're talking, and days of autonomy is how long the batteries can support the load without solar input. Customer budget, well, that's a pretty important one. Some people are serious and they understand that a good system and appropriate system will be expensive. Other people, have this notion of going off grid, but when push comes to shove, they don't have the dollars. Now you'll see that we have given you each a copy of a questionnaire for off-grid systems. Basically, if you have anybody who's interested that you want to talk to about off-grid, fill that in and send it to us and we can assist you with the design process. Just a couple of extracts from that form, and we will also provide you with copies of this form in PDF. Just details of the site, including that very important question down the bottom, forklift available. So batteries are heavy. Moving them around is a very important consideration. What the loads look like, daily, summer, winter, perhaps there's a difference there. Air conditioning, for example. What your maximum load and nominal loads are. And then if you've got some thoughts on, exactly how the system should be put together, let us know, especially layouts of modules, et cetera, all of that can go into helping to put together a proposal. Changing gears again, quick few comments about commercial installations. Export limitation, this is so common now in Queensland that I'm not going to go into export limitation particularly, except to say that 0 doesn't always mean 0. So you are allowed to export up to 1% of your inverter capacity or sometimes up to 2% of a dedicated transformer capacity for a site. So I've got some graphs I'm going to show you in a sec, and what you'll see is that even though this particular site that I'll show you the graphs from is supposedly zero export, in actual fact we're allowed to export a little bit. Ramping rates, this is just how smoothly we can increase or decrease the inverter's output to match the load. You want the smallest steps and the smoothest operation as possible. And then network protection. Systems over 30 kilowatts, utilities say, well, look, we understand that your inverters will turn off if the voltage is too high or too low, or the frequency is out of range, et cetera, but our grid is worth a lot of money to us, and we want to protect it, so we want you to install secondary protection. And when you get into the really big projects, the megawatt style, then the requirements around this really ramp up. So here's an example of a zero export system, 60 kilowatt installation on the Gold Coast. You can see that this was actually a beautiful sunny day, and if there had not have been an export limitation system on this install, you would have seen a classic sort of green bell curve there for the solar. But because the load was up and down, the solar system was ramped up and down to follow the load. On a weekend, because this building on the Gold Coast is an office building and there's no one there on the weekend, so one of yours? Nice. You can see that we have actually been allowed to export a little bit because that particular site has a dedicated transformer. So we're allowed to export a bit there. Just an example of what a network protection relay looks like, some of the requirements that you're going to find in installing network protection, and photos of a couple of boards that we produce and supply for our customers to do this. So both of these boards that will do both zero export as well as network protection. Now, of course, most systems in the commercial space are less than 100 kilowatts because of STCs. I've seen some people, putting in 100 kVA of AC inverter capacity, matched up with 99 kilowatts of DC module capacity. I think you're probably spending too much on your inverters, frankly. Aim for something like 90 kVA AC on your inverters, and think of that as being similar to 6 kilowatts of panels on a 5 kilowatt inverter. Network approvals can take a whole lot longer than the residential space, so if you haven't gone through it before, give yourself a bit of space. Over 100 kilowatts, obviously no STCs, so the upfront is higher. Network protection requirements can really climb as well, and that means that you have to use larger and more sophisticated and frankly more expensive network protection relays. And don't forget to put in fully approved monitoring for LGCs. I've heard of installations where this was an afterthought, or it wasn't done correctly, or, in some regard, the LGC monitoring was just not locked down at the time of installation, and 12 months can go past and those LGCs are effectively lost. Lots of costs in commercial systems. I'll just point out a few to make sure you're aware of them, including, of course, the fees from the utilities for applications and cash flow on extended payment terms. I know of installers who have done projects for large organisations, name brand Australian companies, and then they've been strung out on payment, and that can be very painful for cash flow. Here's an example of some of the costs around the country. Essential and Endeavour are very nice people and actually let you apply for free, but Ergon and Energex are in there getting their pound of flesh, I guess. One of the things we do to help people tackle commercial projects, perhaps commercial projects for the first time, if you've been primarily in the residential sector, is we can produce SLDs for your project. Just to sort of zoom in, here in the bottom left of the diagram, you can see we've got CTs in there connected to one of our boards, along with an E-Gauge monitoring system. E-Gauge is actually the unit that was showing us these graphs earlier that we were looking at for that Gold Coast install. And then up with the inverters, you can see we're actually using radio networking equipment here. So this is an example of where the feed-in limiter board is adjacent to the MSB, but then the inverter locations are somewhere else. And at times, you can run physical cable hardwired, and that's great if that works. At other times, that can be very difficult or impossible, and it is possible to use radio networking equipment, which we can provide. Quick comment on the E-Gauge. It is an interesting piece of kit. Class 1 accuracy and 12 CT inputs, which means that on a 3-phase project, you can monitor the site load as well as the inverter performance, and then say 2 other sub-circuits. On a single phase, you could be doing as many as 12 circuits. And just a very quick comment on clip lock. I mention this because I've seen people come unstuck on clip lock. We offer clip lock clamps from Clenergy. They have a single clamp that suits 4 different roof profiles. So any of the 4 profiles, that clamp is perfectly acceptable and you know, engineered for use, but the profiles themselves have very different numbers of connection points or attachment points required. So if you look at a roof and you think, it's clip lock, you know, probably 700, yeah, and you work out how many clamps you needed, and let's say it was 1,000. If you find out later, no, it's not clip lock 700, it's clip lock 406, you will need not 1,000, you'll need 2,200. And that's a lot more money, and it's a lot more install because you're having to put them so much more close together. So just be really careful about that. The difference between worst case, best case and worst case is like that. It's not close. And finally, another topic I just want to bring to your attention, and is a type of product that's just coming to market now. This is really the domain of installers who are working with farmers, agribusinesses, rural areas, predominantly pumping systems. And we've got this wonderful new type of product called a solar pump drive I'd like to introduce to you today. Oh, where's my video?
There are still regions in the world which do not have electricity, or where the availability of electricity is uncertain. In many cases, these regions are hot and dry, so it's vital to obtain clean water. Many solar panels can efficiently convert solar power to electrical energy. The ABB solar pump drive is designed to effectively use that energy. When enough radiation is available, the ABB solar pump drive starts automatically, and the pump connected to it begins to run. The built-in maximum power point tracking functionality always attempts to feed the maximum amount of power possible from the panels to the pump. Maximum flow and efficiency is reached by noon. The ABB solar pump drive can also be equipped to operate from the grid if no solar power is available. The ABB solar pump drive pumps water in an environmentally friendly, effective way.
So what I really want to highlight here is that for those of you who have heard about solar pumps, typically what that has meant to date is that a pump manufacturer that makes many different shapes and sizes of pumps has, for a very, very limited subset of their range, said, we can provide a controller, you put some solar panels connected to that controller, it runs that pump, therefore that's a solar pump. But the controller and the pump itself come as a kit from the manufacturer. In this case, with an ABB solar pump drive, we're using basically a variable speed drive. And ABB is the world's largest manufacturer of variable speed drives, so they definitely know this space well. A variable speed drive takes AC, grid AC at say 50 hertz, chops it up into DC, and then puts it back into AC, but at a different frequency. And solar pump drives allow us to plug PV DC right into the DC bus halfway through there. What this means is it's pump agnostic. And so if you have a customer that says, I need to power a 10 kilowatt pump, and it's Grundfos. Well, from our point of view, it's like, oh, okay, it's Grundfos. That's interesting, but frankly, we don't care. We're not worried about what the brand is on the pump anymore. We're completely pump agnostic. You just tell us what the electrical requirements of the pump are, and then we can supply a drive and a PV array that will supply the energy required to run the pump. And what that means is that we can now do pumping systems effectively off-grid without the need for batteries. And so these drives can be run either in conjunction with the grid or off-grid. So when they are run in conjunction with the grid, there's a changeover switch. You can't run the grid and the solar together like you might think a typical solar inverter works. Instead, this is a case where you select the switch to be solar only and it's running off the solar. You change the switch over to grid and it runs off the grid. Obviously, you can automate that whole process, but it does mean that we can run both during the day and during the night. In the case where there's no grid available, then we just run off-grid effectively straight off the solar. ABB's range of pump drives extends up to 45 kilowatt three-phase. We've had a customer recently of ours install a 30 kilowatt drive running a 22 kilowatt pump outside of Bowen in northern Queensland. And one of the pieces of feedback we received from that project is that the customer was really impressed that the pump drive, because it understands pumps and motors, was able to identify if the pump got clogged, it would automatically run the pump backwards and forwards 3 times to flush it out. Now, it's not the sort of thing a diesel generator is ever going to do for you. It's not the sort of thing a 3-phase AC connection from the grid will ever do for you. So we're not just getting energy to run the pump from these drives, we're also getting control and management for the pumps as well. So if you do operate in those markets at all and you have some businesses you think might be interested, then definitely let us know and we can start putting a proposal together for you. That concludes my presentation, the technical side of things. I'm going to hand you over to Liam now, and he's going to take a look at the sales side of things for energy storage systems. Thank you.
Thank you, Dane. So Dane's given an excellent overview of the energy storage market and also touched on commercial installations and solar pump drives as well. So I think he did a very good job covering a lot of ground in a small amount of time. It's a very technical area, and I hope everyone got some education out of that presentation. So now I'm going to do some sales training on how to achieve energy storage success for your business in 2016. The first component of my training will be on solar and hybrid storage, so people that are on the grid that are interested in energy storage. So in this sales training, first of all, let's look at what we know. We already know how to pitch and sell solar PV. We know the financial viability of solar power and the return on investment that's available there. We know what solar feed-in tariffs, or in most cases now, retailer feed-in tariffs are available, what STC values are available, and what ever-changing legislation is surrounding Grid Connect PV systems. What we want to learn, most people want to understand what is the financial viability of doing energy storage now for people that are on the grid, what technology combinations to offer the customers, and the best way to pitch and sell upgrades or complete systems. So energy storage, just have a look at the financial viability first. The return on investment at the moment for energy storage is currently lower than solar PV. Solar PV Grid Connect systems at the moment are often given a 4 to 6 year payback, so customers are achieving a 16 to 25% return on investment. So the purchasing decision at the moment for energy storage is more either emotionally driven or they actually have issues with their grid and have regular grid failures. So let's have a little bit of a look at a financial analysis of the difference in benefit you get from just a standard Grid Connect system or incorporating energy storage to a Grid Connect system. So on the left column here, you'll see solar only. And I've used a 5 kilowatt system as the example here. So this 5 kilowatt system is generating 20 kilowatt hours of power a day. And in this example, this property is using 40% of that energy in the sunlight hours. So 8 kilowatt hours of that power is getting consumed. And I've used an example here of 30 cents per kilowatt hour. That is circa the rate we're seeing on consumption throughout Australia. So they're effectively getting a $2.40 benefit per day, and $876 is reduced off their bill per annum by having that consumption of solar energy. Now with this customer without energy storage, the other 12 kilowatt hours is going back to the grid. Most retailer feed-in tariffs now are paying between 6 and 10 kilowatt hours per day. So I've used 8 cents per kilowatt hour as the example here. So they're getting 96 cents per day credit to their bill, total of $350 per annum, and they're getting $1,226 combined credit and savings to bill per year. Now, if we were to incorporate energy storage to that property, and it was a property that could consume the 12 kilowatt hours outside the sunlight hours before the sun came up the next day, this is an example of the total benefit that they could achieve. So they would still get the $876 reduced off their bill from the solar consumption, but the other 12 kilowatt hours would go into their storage system and be used overnight, and effectively they would not have to buy that power off the grid, again at 30 cents. So they would get a daily benefit of $3.60 per day and $1,314 per annum. So their total benefit would be $2,190 per annum. So the annual benefit for that customer is higher. So if the customer is on a stable part of the grid, they have no emotional or personal reason to invest in energy storage at the moment, and they're purely buying on a return on investment, then you should be looking at those customers as a two-stage sale. Any standard PV sale at the moment should be part one of the sale. You need to be giving your customers a roadmap and a pathway to energy storage. So then you can achieve part two in the sale. What I recommend is you put in place a marketing strategy to send energy storage offers to your clients. So if you have a customer that only moves ahead with the Grid Connect solar system at the moment due to those reasons I just mentioned, you should be putting together a marketing strategy to continually send them offers as the technology improves and the pricing gets lower. You should reach out to old customers that were installed post feed-in tariffs or have had their feed-in tariffs expire due to changing the electricity name in some of the networks. And starting the dialogue now is very important. So upselling to a hybrid system, I think, is a very good way to look at these customers. If they're not interested in spending that additional capital cost to put in energy storage straight away, putting in one of these hybrid inverters is a very good way to have them genuinely hybrid ready, and therefore they're going to be looking to you when they want to invest in the batteries, and it will be a very quick plug and play in a lot of examples. The cost we're seeing people charge extra for these hybrid inverters is around $1,000, give or take, depending on the technology. So always providing the current price for battery component of the sale, I think, is very important. Even if they're not moving ahead right now, if they see the capital cost of doing the storage as a certain amount today, and then over the next month and years, you continue to give them offers of energy storage, and they see that technology improve or get cheaper, then you will look at landing that sale, that second part of the sale. So public awareness. The mainstream media we are seeing now is regularly reporting on energy storage, and that's part of the reason why we're all experiencing such high demand. That definitely has been seen by these energy storage masterclass sessions we've done across the country. We've been in Melbourne, Adelaide, Sydney, and now today in Brisbane. Every room has been a sold-out venue, and it's due to the high demand. Everyone's getting asked for energy storage. Generous feed-in tariffs are a thing of the past. Increased costs of power is definitely a driver. And self-consumption is now the goal. People want to use that electricity opposed to feeding back at a low rate. Now, I follow not just the mainstream media, but the industry media, and I'm seeing articles every day. But this is a very interesting video I saw here. Actually, this was from Fairfax Media on the Sydney Morning Herald website, and I think this is a testament to the message the public is being sent and why you're getting so much inquiry for people that are on the grid for energy storage. So I'll play you this quick video.
Using solar power is not only sustainable, but it's renewable, and we have in Australia an endless supply of it. Interest in storage solutions is growing as more people look to maximise their use of solar energy. So how are home batteries going to change the household? Well, here's how solar works now in Australia. When sunlight shines into your solar panels, the power gets directed into the appliances you're using at the time. It's instantaneous, so once you stop using things, the solar energy is redirected to the grid for other people to use. Some Australian households get generous tariffs to give them a financial incentive to feed power into the grid. But for new users, there is no tariff, so they'll want to use as much energy from their solar panels as possible. This is where batteries come in. If you install a solar storage system, any spare power will flow to your battery. Only once the system is charged will energy flow to the grid. It means you can save your energy to use when the sun isn't shining. So for example, a typical Australian household will use up to 20 kilowatt hours in a 24-hour period. The most popular battery size will store 10 kilowatt hours of energy, so this means in the evening you could still do your household chores, have hot showers, watch TV, charge your phone and have the aircon running, and still have solar energy left to spare. This is why home battery use is expected to explode, particularly in New South Wales, where all existing tariffs expire at the end of 2016. Solar users who've paid off their systems will want to start consuming their own solar energy. For new adopters though, setting up a solar panel system and buying a battery is a pretty expensive exercise. But prices are coming down, and as more products are introduced to the market, the options for energy storage are only going to get better and be more affordable.
So I thought that was quite a smart video that Fairfax Media put together, and that's the message the public has definitely been sent. And I can definitely say when we did this presentation in Sydney, we had people quite excited about that example they gave about in New South Wales. They have everyone who's on the 60-cent feed-in tariff expiring on the same date, on the 31st of December in 2016. And a lot of those customers are obviously going to be interested in energy storage. So what prospects are now asking out there in the market? Our company's supply partners, the distributor, has over 500 regular companies that are regular purchasers from us across Australia. So around 6 months ago, I started speaking to the account managers and salespeople within our sales team saying, we're hearing a lot of people are getting asked about energy storage. Let's do an informal survey and start finding out how many people are actually asking, how many of their leads that are calling about a solar PV system are asking about energy storage. And we're hearing that 1 in 2 leads are at least asking about energy storage. They may really be looking up on the internet or finding your company to get a quote on a Solar Grid Connect system, but they've seen articles, they've heard about it, so while they're on the phone, they're saying, hey, why will you give me this quote for a solar PV system? Tell me about energy storage. What are the options? What are the costs? So companies that are knowledgeable about energy storage and are giving people information about energy storage are reporting a higher conversion rate, even if they're not making the storage sale up front. So by actually now entering into that dialogue with your customers, and I hope if you leave training today and you haven't been entering that dialogue, you've been saying to them, look, the return on investment's lower than PV. I don't think it's the right thing for my company to recommend right now. I don't think it's the right thing for my customers. I think that's the wrong way to look about it. I think you need to start entering into the dialogue with every customer, and that's going to help increase momentum for the whole industry. So we're genuinely hearing people that are doing that education are getting a higher conversion rate than companies that aren't, as the customer will continue to hunt around in the market for a company that can explain it to them, and quite often they'll land the PV side of the quotes. So the question is why? When somebody asks you, I want energy storage, you should be asking these customers, why do you want energy storage? The common answers we're hearing to these questions is, I've heard about it. What are the options? What do you recommend? They don't know why they want it. They're asking you because they trust you as the expert. Second answer we're hearing is they know what they want. We want to use our solar at night. We're paying a lot of money for electricity, and and we don't want to be feeding it back to the grid at 6 to 10 cents. And we're also now seeing time of use tariffs come in more and more throughout Australia. And I think as we see time of use tariffs come in across the country more, the demand will pick up for energy storage. The other answer we hear is, I want to use my solar at night and I want blackout protection. I want an emergency power supply. And the other answer is, I'm on the grid and I want to disconnect. So let's have a look at these answers. I've heard about it, what do you recommend? You need to determine which system is best for them, for your customer. They don't know, so you need to figure that out. 99% of customers out there who say, I want energy storage, are really going to want a hybrid system. And there is people out there that are completely disconnecting, and they are making that huge capital investment to disconnect from the grid, but in most cases, they are not. Most people don't want to change the way they live their life. They like being able to turn on the air conditioning, turn on the TV, turn everything on at the same time. People don't want to change that lifestyle side of things. And to not change that lifestyle side of things and actually disconnect from the grid, quite often they're spending $50,000 to $80,000. So quite often, if they don't know which solution they're after, you can very quickly move them away from that off-grid side of things and start focusing on an option that they're potentially going to accept and that you can potentially close a deal on. So depending on the importance of an emergency power supply, you can then decide which hybrid system is best for them. If they're on the grid in the city where they have no incremental power, then for them, just having a hybrid system where they can use the solar at night that does not have an emergency power supply, that may be cheaper than a hybrid system that does, may be a better option for that customer, and you'll have a higher chance of making the deal. Second answer, I want to use my solar at night. This is a good little diagram here that just shows people quite often are at work throughout the day, they can't use all that solar energy, or they can't, even if they are at home, they can't get their load up high enough to use all the solar production. So they want to move that solar production into the evening, they want to use it at night. So the typical reasons for that answer is they're receiving that low feed-in tariff rate, they're paying a lot of money for the power, they're potentially going on to a time of use tariff. And let's look at packaging a solution. So if the customer has said, you tell me what's right for me, and you've determined that this hybrid system without emergency power supply is the right solution for them, or they've given you the answer that I just want to use my solar at night, here's an example of how you can package up a solution like that. So what I've done here is I've actually used a PV price for a 5 kilowatt system utilising the Solar Choice PV price check data. So Solar Choice actually release a monthly PV price check data, which is an excellent piece of data that they take from many companies' sales. So we've done an average across the 4 capital cities we're doing these events at. So in Melbourne, Adelaide, Sydney and Brisbane, we've averaged the 5 kilowatt sale price across those 4 states for November this year. So the average sale price we're seeing is $7,234. Now we all know systems are selling well less than this and sometimes for more than this. And the PV price check data from Solar Choice does show a low and a high price point for every city. In this example, we've used the average price point. So let's look at packaging a hybrid system utilising the SunGrow hybrid inverter with an LG Chemical 6.4 kilowatt hour battery. So in most cases, I'm seeing customers that purchase this product from our company selling this product for an additional $1,000. There's a small bit of extra margin in there. There is a bit more extra labour cost to run a data cable to a meter, but it does make their system ready for the hybrid inverter, for the hybrid battery. And in this case, we're using the LG battery at $7,000. So this customer is buying that full hybrid package, able to use their solar at night at $15,234. Let's look at that third answer. I want to use my solar at night, but I want blackout protection. I want an emergency power supply. And some of the reasons why people answer the question that way is they're receiving the low feed-in tariff, same as the last answer. They're potentially going on to a time of use tariff, but they really want to be able to use their power in a blackout. Now, some people that are in a stable part of the grid still want this. It's an emotional thing. They want to be the house that has lights on when the whole suburb's blacked out. You know, they're the guy who wants to have the garage door open with the fridge full of cold beers, sticking it to the neighbours saying, come have a beer with me. So some people it's emotional, and that will really get them to close the deal with you. So let's have a look at packaging a system like that with an emergency power supply. Again, we've used that average sale price of $7,234, and in this case we've used the SolarX hybrid inverter, which has an emergency power supply with a 2,000 watt continuous output, which is quite a fair bit of power. You won't be able to run oven circuits and hot water system elements off that, but you will be able to identify their power circuits and lighting circuits and run them off the emergency power supply. And in most cases, our customers are putting in a manual changeover switch. In some cases, you can also put in an automatic changeover switch. If they're away from the property a lot, they're on the edge of the grid and they get blackouts a lot, they don't want to lose all the food in the fridge and $400 worth of meat in the chest freezer, they may want an automatic changeover switch. In a lot of cases, people are putting a manual changeover switch in, so customers do need to go down and flick over to the emergency power supply. If they switch over to the emergency power supply and turn on the kettle and the toaster and everything on at the same time, it may overload that circuit, and I think they'll quickly learn that they can't go too silly on it. Again, we've used the LG chemical battery, and in this case, this full hybrid package with the emergency power supply, you're able to sell to your customer at $16,234. Now note, these examples of packages I'm giving you, there is a good amount of margin in that second part of the sale. So if you achieve the Grid Connect component only, we all know what margin is in there for that kind of bit over $7,000 package. And with this hybrid side of things, there is somewhat similar margins in there. So you are almost doubling your margin in the sale. The third answer, I'm on the grid and I want to go off grid. Some of the reasons why people answer the question this way is they want to disconnect from the grid. They want to be self-sufficient. They want to stick it to the power companies. They've had enough. And as I said, some people are doing it, but it is the minority. So you need to offer your customers the best solution for them. From asking the question, why do you want energy storage? You can look at those things I've just explained to you and determine what is the best system for that customer. You need to qualify that answer to why and focus on the solution they're most likely to take. And this is a kind of a sales 101 thing. You don't want to come to a customer and say, here's option 1 without the EPS, here's 2 with an EPS, here's 3 to go off grid for 50 grand. You're giving them too many options and people just won't know which way to go. You really need to consult with the customer, figure out what is the best solution for that customer, focus on that and try to close the business. You've got your highest chance of closing the deal if you focus on one solution. So obviously the next thing is to ask for their business, ask for the sale. Once you've done that consultancy, you've figured out what is the best system for them, you need to ask your customer for the business. You need to try to ask them, look, would you like to make the investment for a full hybrid system today, or do you want to go hybrid ready? Now, on the topic, I want to ask for your business today as well. On everyone's seat, there's our contact information, all our brands we sell, and all the contact details of our account managers from within our company supply partners. So let's move on to off-grid. Off-grid, in most cases, I hear from customers that are focused primarily on on-grid sales are turning away these leads. They're finding that it's a very technical area. They're just not taking on the lead. And we're giving you the ability today to say yes to those leads. So if a customer calls you up tomorrow, or you've had an inquiry over the last couple of weeks where they still haven't probably made a step, please contact them back, or if they call tomorrow, say yes. What we're giving you the ability to do is use the off-grid questionnaire that you've got there on your seat and that we'll also be emailing out, and you can attain a set of information where then staff such as Dane Muldoon will be able to design and recommend an off-grid solution. Now, we still will put there a disclaimer for you to go and seek your off-grid accredited installer to run over the top of that recommendation and make sure it is appropriate for your customer's home. Obviously, you're going to need the install cost as well, and then you can package the products that we've given you the price on, the install cost from your installer, add your margin and go back. So it will be a two-stage sale, but even with off-grid installers who really know the products back to front, quite often won't design a off-grid system on site at one point of time. They'll go on site, they'll attain the information, they'll go back to their office, design the system, and then put the prop back to their customer. So it's still a very similar way. If you want to be able to get the skill set to be able to do a full off-grid design yourself, even as salespeople, if you're not electricians, there's people like Glenn Morris who do fantastic courses, 4-day course he's doing at his property where you can go and stay there and do a 4-day extensive course and become knowledgeable enough to be able to design these systems for your customer. But in a lot of cases, people are wanting to focus on sales, and that's where we can help you out with our technical support at Supply Partners. Here's a quick example on somebody filling out this questionnaire. So in this case, it's a house. The customer's using power every day. They've got a average power use and peak load. And obviously we're looking at the summer peak load to be able to design the system. And they have a typical household load pattern. So in this case, the peak load was 6 kilowatts, probably from an air conditioning system, and some other detail there around their requirements. So the example of a system we would recommend to you would be a 10 kilowatt PV array, which might be roof mount, or if it's ground mount, we may price you up on a Solar Terrace 2 or a Solar Terrace 3 system, depending on whether it's going on a concrete slab or it's a pile drive system. We'll use the Schneider XW Plus 8548 in this example, 2 Schneider 8600 charge controllers, a 1250 amp battery set up there, which is 48 volts, utilising the Absolute. And then we'll give you recommendations on the additional components like the generator starter, remote comms, battery monitor, system control panel, etc. So that's the end of the sales training side of things. I hope you got something out of that. We've now also got some really good presentations from our guest panel, and they're going to talk about some products that they have on the market right now and some exciting new products that are coming out in 2016. So first of all there, I'll hand over to Baden from G&B Exide, and he'll give his presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Dane, and thank you, Liam, for your training and sales advice on those products there. So they've given us a bit of time, 3 of us manufacturers, to talk as suppliers that supply to themselves, and we just wanted to have a quick run through of what we're able to supply now and maybe things coming through in the future. My name is Baden. I'm the sales manager for Queensland, and I work for G&B Industrial Power. Who are we? G&B is a division of Exide Technologies, the global company. G&B is the industrial branch of Exide Technologies. We provided a provider of energy storage solutions and subsidiaries in more than 80 countries around the world. We have manufacturing in over 7 different countries around the world. Based on over 100 years of experience in technologies and innovation in battery manufacturing. So that's where we've sort of based a lot of our expertise in this marketplace. We have been supplying batteries in Australia for solar for 30 plus years. So it's all been off-grid up until the last 5 years. A lot of it also has been with utilities in storage for the systems. We as manufacturers are one of the only people who have local support office here. We have our own manufacturing, we have our own offices here and supply our own products into this industry. Not just one product. We sell quality products, and that's one of the things we talk about, that we just don't have one answer that solves every problem. We see that there's a lot of times we have 17 different product ranges for the solar market, and sometimes we still don't have the right solution available for what the customer's after. Give you an example, you should all have a sheet on your table there. This sort of just gives a brief overview of some of the products that are available through us. We are the owners and manufacturer of the Sun and Shine products from Germany. The examples there, we're starting to understand now how these off-grid products, historically, these premium off-grid products are now working in Grid Connect as well. So on our cycle life graphs, you can actually see 2 lines. One relates to the off-grid, and now the new graphs also represent how they're going to operate on grid. Those cycle life graphs are based on 80% capacity of the battery's life and are based on 365 days of usage. So that's one of the important things. The A600 range, specifically we provide a lot of that product into the BHP, into the Pilbara, for the high temperature usage. Some of our other brands we have is Absolute, is an AGM product from the USA. We build up to 6,300 amp hour battery systems on that one. This is the product that we build under license for the military. We also provide it to the US fleet for their nuclear submarines. That same product that we build for nuclear submarines in the US fleet is what we provide here in the solar market. So these are where we're saying we're providing the premium products that aren't just products left over from other industries. Energy Store Gel is our German brand gel battery that we build in Germany. It's a value price point product that's helping compete where value for money is becoming an issue with trying to compete with some of the other products coming in. So still built in Germany to a point. Some of our newer technologies coming through is our Power Cycle brand products. This is one of the first batteries actually made specifically for Grid Connect. Made in Germany, 12 volt, 180 amp hour, 1900 cycles to 50% DOD. We package that in 4, 8, 16, 32, 64 kilowatt systems with 50% usable. Sun and Shine at Home is another German product with up to 3,800 cycles, 50% DOD. Great thing with these products here, you can use any inverter with them. Pretty much most solar battery inverters have got a gel profile for charging gel batteries, and heavily recyclable with the lead acids. Future products for GMB, we have Sun and Shine Lithium. We've got a few systems out there with solar. We're still finding our market with the solar market with where this product can be used. Generally in the larger scale, up to 100 kilowatt systems is where it seems to be more viable marketplace for that particular product. We now have products that are coming through like Tensor. Tensor is a flooded product. It has double the cycle off of any other flooded product in the market. These are the new lead acid technologies that are coming through. So we've just got a bit of a note there on the different construction there on that particular product. Restore, we do big, large containerized systems. One of the big ones we're doing in Europe at the moment, 6.4 million with the EU. It's a combined battery, so it's not just one technology, it's actually 4 technologies all in one container where the power is drawn from different technologies when the battery's at its best performance. Sun and Shine at Home, it's has lithium is a new product coming through next year. So that's one that we sort of would see more into a home environment. And one of our big products that we've had a really good success, we've just had $500 million worth of funding from JP Morgan, is to advance our graphite technology. We've been building these batteries graphite in USA. We've refitted 4 factories already, and the automotive market is where that's mainly been driven with the stop-start hybrid vehicles that need a high-performance battery. These products have been invented into industrial products, but we're still going through up to 12 years of field testing before we release the product to our marketplace. We don't like to come out with a product until it's been proven. So that's just some of the highlights of some of the products we have available here in Australia. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Baden. So next presentation we have is from Frederick from Bosch. So Frederick's going to give some information about their current products and what products are coming out in 2016. Thank you, Frederick.
Thanks, Liam. So my name is Frederick Tröster. I'm head of sales of Bosch PowerTech. We are selling solar inverters and battery storage systems since last year. So what I want to give you today is a short overview of a new product we bring to market Q2 next year, and what we want to do with this product. So in short, this picture here summarizes our road to the future. For us, we see our solar inverters and battery storage system as one puzzle piece of a smart home solution, because we as Bosch, we are not only in solar inverters, we do also smart home appliances, security systems, heating appliances, and so on. And in future, we as Bosch want to provide a smart home integrated system where all these Bosch products are working together. With the target, of course, to consume your own generated PV power as much as possible. And if you have any surplus power, we will provide a solar battery storage system to store this energy as well. So perhaps some of you are familiar with the product on the left-hand side, our BBTS5 hybrid. Some called it the fridge. This was one of the first lithium-ion fully integrated battery storage systems on the market. We started to sell that product about 3 years ago in Germany, sold some 100 systems there. We are bringing now a new product to market, which is called SolarWatt, and we have phased out now our first generation, the BBTS5 hybrid. The SolarWatt product is quite innovative. It has won some general awards on the Intersolar in Europe, in Germany, this year. And on the next slides, I will show you a little bit more what the product is all about. Just a little bit about the company. Why SolarWatt? SolarWatt is a German manufacturer, same as Bosch, has a long history, over 20 years in the PV sector. It's also owned by the majority shareholder of BMW, and we have a close relationship due to our automotive business with them as well. So that's a good fit for us. Both products are German-made, German-engineered, and we bring this product next year here to the market. So here you see also the specific about the product. Dane explained in the beginning the differences between DC and AC coupled systems. It's a DC coupled system, which makes it also very easy for retrofit, which means you can start with a Bosch inverter as a grid-tied inverter. You don't have any additional upfront investment because it's a grid-tied inverter. It's not a hybrid inverter, but at the same time, you can sell this inverter as storage ready because it works perfectly fine with that SolarWatt battery. You connect that battery on the DC side between the panels and the MPP input of the inverter, which makes it also a very easy installation. At the same time, it's, as also Dane explained, it's at the moment about own consumption of PV energy. You can complement the whole system with a Bosch heat pump to facilitate or to provide an even cheaper form of storage, meaning thermal storage. So instead of feeding back into the grid surplus PV power, you switch on a heat pump, you store that surplus PV power in form of hot water into the heat pump, and it gives you a very cheap form of storage as well. So we offer you different steps, what you can offer to your customer in form of PV energy generation, storage, thermal storage, and electrical storage as well. Last slide, the battery pack. Here you can see how it looks like inside. As I think Dane mentioned in the beginning as well, for some battery systems you need a forklift because batteries are heavy. With our systems it's very easy. The full package weighs assembled 75 kilograms, but every single component weighs less than 25 kilograms. So it's easy to assemble. The basic version comes with 4.4 kilowatt hours of storage, including a DC-DC converter. And if you want to go bigger, up to 11 kilowatt hours, you just put a second housing next to it with additional 3 battery packs, and it gives you a total of 11 kilowatt hours of storage, fully usable, 100% depth of discharge. Sorry.
Thank you, Frederick. So the next presenter we have is Alan Choi. Alan's the Australian manager for LG Chemical. And again, he's going to tell you about the products they've got on the market today and what exciting products are coming out in 2016. Thank you, Alan.
Thank you, Liam. Thank you for your time. I'm very excited to introduce ourselves and our product roadmap. LG Chem is global top 5 chemical company. Our main business is the moment is petrochemical and plastic resin. But we are moving to very fast to lithium battery business for the future. We have 4 different types of batteries: cylindrical battery, small prismatic battery, small pouch type battery, and also storage battery and electrical vehicle battery. We start lithium battery business 1990, and mostly for consumer electronic devices, for laptop and mobile phone. But since 2008, we start big pouchy type battery, which is different advanced technology. Battery size is like exactly same as this. This is our brochure. We called flat battery sometimes. The battery market is growing very fast from next year because all the electrical vehicle is coming into the market from 2016. At the moment, the mobile phone market is very saturated. We are global market share number 2. But for the automotive business and energy storage business, we think we are our market share at the moment about 40 to 50%. This is our battery manufacturing facilities. We have 4 different area facility in Korea and China and United States and Michigan. I mean, also plan to build a new plant in Europe and Poland. At the moment, our production capacity is about 14 gigawatt hour, but next couple of years, it will become about 30 gigawatt hour plant. So automotive and energy storage business is capacity is becoming a very, very big. Energy storage cell is sharing with automotive battery. The chemistry is slightly different, but same technology, same manufacturing process, and same shape. So far, about 432,000 electrical vehicle is in the field with our battery, with no safety event reported and proven technology. We are going to about 19 different electrical car companies now adopting LG Chemical battery. So about 2 million electrical vehicles with LG Chem battery will be available in 2020. So with this proven technology, we are using for the energy storage system. So under battery business, storage business, we have 3 different segments. So one segment is utility scale and or commercial scale, the business, and another one is residential, and the other one is UPS for the data center or telecom equipment. For the residential product, we have launched this product this April, this June in Australia. So main pack is 6.4 kilowatt hour and 60 kilogram, and 5 kilowatt maximum power. And it can be scalable with a 3.2 expansion pack, so it can be 9.6 and 12.8 kilowatt hour battery system. Our performance is depth of discharge 90%, but cycle life is more than 6,000 cycle life. Operating temperature is 0 to 40 Celsius. We can give you warranty 10 years. That is only the battery. We still need inverters. So this is the inverter is compatible with our battery at the moment. So we first integrate with the SMA from the net last year. Now is available with the Schneider, Sungrow, and SolarX. This is 48 volt system. Also, we are going to launch new product after mid of next year. So the difference is the current product is scalable with the expansion unit, but the next generation is 3 different products will be available. So no expandable unit is available, but main unit can be connected as a parallel to increase capacity. So 3 kilowatt hour, 7 kilowatt hour, and 10 kilowatt hour battery 48 volt system will be available. The difference is the current unit is IP21, which is indoor unit, but next one is IP54. It will be outdoor system. Another product also will be available next June or May, which is high voltage system, 400 volt system, 7 kilowatt hour, and also 10 kilowatt hour. This system will be compatible with the solar edge inverter. This is commercial battery. Each module has a 3.2 kilowatt hour battery. It will be stacked in the rack. So each rack has a 45 kilowatt hour system, so it can be scalable energy by rack. So some commercial building or factory, about 3 or 5 racks will be required. So it can be about 300 kilowatt hour to 500 kilowatt hour. Also, we have a container solution. This rack is installed inside of a container. This container has air cooling and firefightings. And one 40-foot container is now 2.1 megawatt hour, but next generation battery with about the energy will be doubled up with the same footprint. So it'll be a 5 megawatt hour per 40-foot container. Thank you for your time. Yep.
Thank you, Alan. Next, I've got Dane coming up, giving a couple of quick slides on 2 other products coming out in 2016. And then we're going to step on to the Q&A. So if you've got any questions, please fire them out. If we cut the Q&A short and you haven't had a chance to ask your question, please make sure you write it on the feedback form. We are going to send all the questions and answers to everyone who attends the sessions post the events. Thank you, Dane.
So just a couple of quick products I'd like to bring to your attention, which are coming out next year. The first one is a hybrid inverter from ABB. You're probably familiar with their Aurora and Trio ranges of solar inverters. The React hybrid inverter is a unit which has been released in Europe this quarter and is designed to work in conjunction with a compatible battery pack. You can see in the image there, the React inverter itself is on the right and it has one battery installed to the left. A couple of different models available, 3.6 kVA, 4.6 kVA. You know, the usual things you'd expect from a solar inverter, 2 MPPTs, etc., etc. The batteries that ABB will be supplying as compatible batteries will have cells in there from Panasonic, and each individual battery unit will hold 2 kilowatt hours of energy storage with an expected 10-year lifespan. The battery unit itself is 24 kilograms, so it's quite easy to work with inside the overall unit, which is 37 kilograms. So that's a wall-mounted unit, and some wall-mounted units we're seeing the weight can get pretty high, so you need to be careful about the structural aspect of the wall itself if you're putting batteries on them. There will be the opportunity to have up to 3 of these batteries, so a completely expanded system will be 6 kilowatt hours. And it is a product that offers an emergency power system capability. So in the case of a blackout, you can draw up to 1 kilowatt instantaneously from each of up to 3 batteries. In other words, a fully expanded system with 3 batteries will be able to deliver 3 kilowatts. And secondly, One of our module suppliers, Phonosolar, has a energy storage system style product coming out next year, which is a fully integrated cabinet with the solar inverter, batteries all in the one enclosure. They've already been testing the waters a little bit here in Australia with a 3-phase version. The full release is coming next year and we'll have both single-phase and 3-phase versions. And I think that's interesting because if you're familiar with battery inverters from people like Schneider, SMA, Selectronic, if you want a 3-phase system that's totally supported and totally doable, but you need 3 individual battery inverters, which can get expensive. So at the moment, there are not particularly good options available for 3-phase energy storage. Having a 3-phase energy storage system, the PhonoCube may well meet the needs of at least some of your customers. So moving on to questions and answers, we've covered all sorts of things today, and we have with us, obviously, our 3 members of the expert panel. I'd like to ask if anyone has any questions, and let's see if we can have our expert panel offer some thoughts. Well, it seems like everybody's really taking it all on board. That's tremendous. Oh, no, here we go. Question in the front.
Anthony Sachs, Australian Solar Council. Anthony Sachs, Australian Solar Council. Baden, a lot of Australia's hot. A lot of these batteries go in off-grid systems. Can you talk about the batteries you recommend for hot climates?
Yes. So one of the things that we have found through historically, especially with the gel technology, we have quite a few technical papers about how our Sun and Shine A600 range doesn't get affected by the temperature as much as what historically has been treated as being maybe a 50% reduction over a 10-degree. We find that a lot less when we actually have done in the field experience with that particular product. The new Power Cycle product is a specific product designed specifically for higher temperatures. We've just supplied 32,000 of those to telcos and, for their communication cabinets in very hot climates in South Africa. That's a product that's only just new to the market with partial state of charge operation and specifically designed for the hotter temperatures.
Thank you.
Sir? So that was a question regarding the SunGrow hybrid unit. One of the things that Liam has pointed out is that at the moment that is a 5 kilowatt single phase hybrid inverter that does not have an energy emergency power system, and there has been talk from SunGrow about having a version 2 product with EPS built in. At this point in time, that's looking like mid next year, so around May, June 2016. SunGrow are actually doing offering a presentation shortly, so that might be a question that they can make mention of during their presentation as well. The gentleman at the back.
Hi, Gabrielle from SunSource Group. A question to the LG representative. Are you working with any other inverter manufacturers other than the 5 for your battery system to be compatible with in the future?
Our strategy is we are trying to integrate as many as possible with the inverter company. At the moment, we are integrating Schneider, and Schneider will be available end of this month. Some Selectronic also keen to work with us. So. Yeah, a couple of different inverter company will be
inverter. It will be available about beginning of next year.
Thank you.
A question up here.
My name is Brendan Goff. I'm the State Manager of Century UASA Standby Power Division. In our industry, we see a lot of varying opinions about batteries in this particular market. There's some concern in varying areas, some of the customers that we deal with. The question that I'd like to ask is, in the residential field, what sort of government regulations or regulatory bodies are going to be set up to monitor this, certainly at a domestic level? Last thing we want to see is another roofing insulation situation.
Look, certainly agree wholeheartedly with your comments about concerns around safety. That is a bit of a tricky situation right now because the existing standards for battery installations are really out of date. They pretty much reference flooded lead-acid batteries exclusively in an off-grid scenario. We're talking about potentially lithium batteries or other types of lead-acid batteries installed in an on-grid residential scenario. To that end, we've been informed that the relevant groups are working hard to get the standards fully updated. Unfortunately, getting standards changed can take an extended period of time. Even when there's agreement, it can take 2 years to get a standards change through. In the case of the intervening period between now and then, I know that the Solar Council is working on some recommendations and industry best practices, so John will be able to make a comment about that. I think everyone is aware that safety is a concern. I'm not sure everyone is aware of how much of a concern it is. Hopefully we won't all have to find out the hard way.
Thank you, Dane. And as expressed, if your question was not answered there, please write it on the Q&A. So we're going to keep moving on. I'm going to do a quick product focus on a couple of products that we distribute from supply partners, and then we'll move on from there. So some of the products that I promoted in the sales and marketing information there was the SunGrow hybrid inverter. It's a 5 kilowatt inverter which works with the LG battery, and same as the SolarX inverters. These are both becoming very popular hybrid solutions. So please contact us if you'd like some pricing on those products. Now, I thought I'd quickly go on to just touching on Grid Connect Solar and one of the products in that area. We have a number of excellent grid tie inverters we distribute, brands such as ABB, SunGrow, Schneider Electric, to name a few. But Bosch, I think, is an inverter that it was worth mentioning. Their new grid tie inverters are a genuine German-made inverter. They're a household brand, and I feel that with their premium aesthetical appearance of that inverter, the fact it is a German-made inverter, and it is a brand that people have heard of before. Quite often when people step into the solar industry, they haven't heard of the likes of SMA or ABB, and this may be something you can incorporate into your sales strategy to have a household brand name inverter to help you convert more deals. They very recently reduced their price point in the market, and it's a very attractive price point. So we'll be making contact with the purchasing managers from your companies that have been here today. But if you would like that pricing quicker, please look at the contact information on those slips on your chairs, and feel free to contact one of our account managers directly to attain the pricing of those Bosch inverters. And I think you'll find that they're an excellent solution for your customers. So that's the end of our sales training. I hope everyone got something out of that training. And as long as everyone takes one thing away today, we definitely feel like we've done something for everyone's businesses. And next we're going to hand over to Jim and Robin from SunGrow. They're also the sponsors of the networking component of the evening. So they're going to give a presentation. I think we're going to take a really short break then so everyone can stretch your legs, go to the bathroom if required. And then John Grimes is going to give a presentation, give a member update on what the Australian Solar Council and Energy Storage Council have been doing this year and what they're doing in 2016. So once SunGrow have finished their presentation, please feel free to have a quick stretch of the legs, and then we're going to reconvene back in here in 5 minutes after that. John's going to give his presentation, and then post that we're going to break to have some networking and have some drinks and a bite to eat. So I hope everyone enjoyed the presentation, and next is Sungrow. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Len. And my name's Jim. I come from Sungrow. My colleague Robin will have the presentation. I will quickly go through the first two parts, which is about the Sungrow profile, company profile. My colleague will go the rest part. Sungrow is a solar inverter manufacturer, which was built by Mr. Cao in 1997. Until by today, we already have 18 years experience in manufacturing the solar PV inverter. Year by year, our business had been growing up bigger and bigger. In 2008, we have been involved in building solar power in Beijing Olympic Games. In 2010, we have been involved in building solar power in Shanghai Expo. In 2011, we have been successfully issued the IPO in China Shenzhen stock market. On today, the stock value of Sungrow is about $3 billion. We have 400 people out of 1,300 people dedicated in the R&D department. We have done a very outstanding performance in the past 5 years. In 2010, we only done $99 million in terms of the revenue. But in last year, we've done $487 million in terms of revenue. This is a global map. We have covered from Europe, American, Japan, and Australian as well. We have an office located in Sydney and have a warehouse located in Sydney for sales and after-sales service. We have shipped 10 gigawatt in China domestically and shipped 1.5 gigawatt to Europe. This is the ranking table which had been done by ISH Research. We can see in 2011 we ranked number 5 in terms of the shipment globally. In last year, we jumped to rank number 2. Which becomes the second largest solar PV inverter manufacturer globally in terms of the shipment, following SMA. We have a wide range of products where our products start from a 2.0 kilowatt to 2.5 megawatt inverter. So we can see this container is a 2.5 megawatt solar inverter, which for the solar farm, something big. This is an inverter for Australian markets. We're selling from 2 kilowatt to 50 kilowatt inverter. This is our 50 kilowatt inverter. We have 4 MPPT built in. And if you have a job more than 50 kilowatt, this is very good, cost-effective option for your job in terms of the price per kilowatt. This is our 30 kilowatt inverter. We already got AA grade from Fulton Test. This is 10 kilowatt. It's a 3-phase. This is the residential inverter. We starts from 2.0 kilowatt, single phase. As you can see, we have 2.5, 3, and 4 is a single phase, and the 3 kilowatt and 5 kilowatts with a dual MPPT. This is our hybrid inverter. Our colleague will present more details in following part. We have met some key quality assurance standard like ISO 9001 and ISA 8000 to make sure the products are produced properly with outstanding quality. Thanks everyone. Now I'm going to pass the presentation to my colleague for the rest part. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim. So I will talk about the SunGrow hybrid inverter, SH5K. This is the overview of the residential energy storage system. So it's including PV panels, SunGrow hybrid inverter with energy meter, and also battery system and house application. So for the SunGrow SH5K, it has a built-in EMS energy management system. In the daytime, the solar system provide power to supply the load, and in the meantime, it will charge the battery. After the battery is fully charged, the rest power can sell to the grid, or it can activate load control, this digital output to control the load to increase the self-consumption. At night, when the PV system is off, the battery will discharge to supply the load, and if the battery cannot provide sufficient power to supply the load, it can draw the power from grid as well. This is the technical specs. I highlight 3 points. So first, the maximum PV input is 6.5 kilowatt, and the nominal AC output power is 5 kilowatts. For this hybrid inverter, it's compatible with lithium battery and the lead acid battery. So one thing I want to highlight here at this stage, SunGrow only have single phase 5 kilowatts hybrid inverter. Regarding previous question, so next year we will have next generation hybrid inverter that includes the off-grid system. So with a backup hybrid inverter. There are 3 main features for our product. The first one is intelligent dual function. So for this hybrid inverter, it can measure the whole system and start the loads automatically when the battery are fully charged, and still have sufficient PV power. So if the customer, after the battery fully charged, if the customer don't want to feed the power to the grid, they can use the load control to basically the load. For example, the water pump can connect to this digital output to increase the self-consumption. There are 3 modes to activate this digital output. The first one is on and off mode. Basically, it can turn on and turn off to activate this digital output. The second one is the customer can set the time, the beginning and ending time during the specific period it can to turn on the load. The third one is the optimize the mode. So basically, the customer can set in the value in use this LCD display. When the energy meter measures the power, if the power is more than the setting value, the digital output will activate and to control the load. The second function is the zero export function, so which means the feeding power can be controlled as 0. In some grid companies require the solar system can use as a zero export function. The operation principle is that the energy meter will measure the feeding power and communicate with the hybrid inverter. If the feeding power is higher than the 0, the inverter will be derating. The whole solar system will produce the power to match the load. Basically, for the setting is quite simple. So there is a selection with feed power. If you set the feeding power to 0, so zero export function will be activated for the system. The third feature is intelligent monitoring via solar info monitoring. After the hybrid inverter is installed, and if the customer purchases the Wi-Fi module, and they can download the solar info module, which is for the Android and iOS system. So they can able to view the power generation, load power consumption, and the state of battery. One thing I want to highlight here, when the customer downloads this app and register the solar info bank with their email address, that means the Earth alarm function will be automatically activated. If there is Earth fault occurs, it will send the email to remind the customer. There are also other feature for this hybrid inverter with the high efficiency. For the maximum efficiency is up to 98%, and this has high protection classes up to IP65, which is suitable for the indoor and outdoor application, with a wide operation temperature range from -25 up to 60 degrees. This hybrid inverter has a natural cooling which has a low noise. This is a supply curve. Basically, the customer there are two options when the customer to purchase our product. The first option is with the hybrid inverter energy meter and the battery. So they can use the system as an energy storage system. So Sungrow only sells the inverter, but this hybrid inverter is compatible with the lead acid battery and lithium battery with LG, Samsung, and the panel. And if the customer just purchase the hybrid inverter and energy meter, they can use as a normal solar inverter. But one thing I want to highlight is it's compulsory to install a Sungrow energy meter. To prove the high reliability of our product, we already received many certificates which has been tested in the lab. So we have the certificates such as for 777. Next, I will talk about the global service. After the customer purchase our product, if they have any inquiry, they can ring our hotline. So our team can able to give the customer support. And we also have the on-site service. We have local contractor which can able to help the customer to replace the inverter. Otherwise, we can send the spare parts to the installer. To provide a faster response for our customer, we have the warehouse in Sydney, which can able to dispatch the replaced inverter to the installer directly in 2 business days. As my colleague mentioned before, Sungrow already installed our product globally. So this is some case reference for the commercial application. The install capacity up to megawatts in UK, and US, German, and Italy. Yeah, thank you. Regarding some question we can talk about it during the networking drinks if you are interested in our product. Thank you.
Some of you might know that I was appointed in 2008 as the first part-time CEO of the Australian New Zealand Solar Energy Society, as we were then known, 2008. And I couldn't have foreseen what was about to happen in terms of the solar market in Australia. And as a result, what that would mean for our organisation, how we had to professionalise and modernise and become, really the voice of solar in this country. As you know, solar boomed. As an industry, we have collectively delivered fantastic economic, social and environmental outcomes for the people of Australia. This industry now employs has employed up to 20,000 direct solar jobs. Now, if you extrapolate that out to indirect jobs, all of the other people who are involved in our industry, then we're talking about a really significant number. So we're a big employer. We bring jobs to regional and rural Australia. In fact, as you all know, solar is strongest in the mortgage belts of our big cities and in the bush, and that's where we get a lot of work and that's where we employ people. They tell me that we're approaching 5 gigawatts of combined solar PV installation so far in Australia. Fantastic number. And of course, in doing this, we provide our customers with competition and choice. We actually bring down electricity prices, not just for people who install in solar PV on their own roofs, but actually we've shown that we actually help electricity prices for all electricity customers. And that's a topic for another lecture entirely. In 2009, there were 7,000 installed solar systems. I remember Muriel Watt putting up a slide at the conference in 2008, and we were celebrating the fact that we had put in 28 megawatts of solar PV in that year. Today, there are more than 1.5 million. It's true, I think, that every year is a big year in the solar industry, and 2015 was no exception. We started the year 2015 in about as bad a position as any industry can be in, because we had very powerful forces lined up against us wanting to take us out as an industry. Unprecedented that a government would target a successful industry to wipe it out. Like, it just beggars belief. But as you all know, that's where we were. But we responded to that. We didn't just roll over. We, as an industry, stood up, and just as importantly, maybe more importantly, we harnessed the support of our customers, the solar-loving public of Australia. And so we were able to send a strong message. We took a stand, and ultimately, ladies and gentlemen, we won. Politically, the small-scale scheme is now untouchable. I walk through the press gallery at Federal Parliament House, and I have seasoned journos that come up to me and say, gee, you boys would be pretty pleased, wouldn't you? Right? Everybody knows you can't touch solar. They'll come after you, right? So that's a fantastic win for our industry. And let me tell you that you wouldn't want to go into Parliament House and talk about wind power today, because they'll literally blow you out of the place, right? So we stood up, and we reaped the rewards of doing that. But it does cast my mind back to when we called the first Save Solar Community Forum here in Brisbane, well, in Redcliffe actually, in the seat of Petrie. And we started by putting out some advertisements in the newspaper. We called a meeting of the local installers, and I think there were 10 people who came to the planning meeting. And I said, folks, see this auditorium? It's our job together to fill it. And on the evening it was a Wednesday night at dinner time. It was winter time. It was cold in Redcliffe, right? So it's not exactly downtown Brisbane. But I was doing the expectant father thing. I was pacing up and down and thinking, crap, I wonder if anyone's actually going to come to this thing. We've made a big statement here. And I'm very pleased to say, but by the time they played the last post at 6 p.m. in the RSL had directed us to close the doors because we'd exceeded the OHS occupancy for the room. And I'm really pleased to say that we went on to do that around Australia 11 more times. This was some of the rallies that we called. We called this rally around Australia with 2 weeks' notice. We had 33 pickets outside electoral offices across the country. Here's a photograph of one of the bigger ones in Sydney. And I love this, the lone protester on the Gold Coast. Does anyone know this bloke? What's his name? Kev, I think. I understand. We had the full range of response. It was absolutely fantastic. Well, I'm pleased to say that our research institutions are still some of the world's very best when it comes to solar technology. The Australian Renewable Energy Agency, ARENA, has not been abolished, despite the government having a bill in the federal parliament today called the ARENA Abolition Bill. We're starting to see our industry mature, to consolidate. The fly-by-night operators have largely come and gone. And that's really good news. Standards are improving. We're seeing fewer installation errors. There's even work happening now to collaborate to get DC isolators off rooftops. Hallelujah. Right now, it's interesting. I've got a couple of big global companies who are working with us to identify well-run, large-scale solar companies in Australia to acquire them. And that's because solar is becoming a big mainstream global business. And again, that's a sign of maturity in our industry. Our industry is no longer being driven by unrealistic and unsustainable feed-in tariffs. There is some modest support through the RET, but the fact remains that distributed solar energy is just cheaper than electricity you can buy from the grid. So we're building this industry on the fundamental economics not on the solar coaster boom and bust. And I think it's a great place for all of us to be. Millions of Australians have experienced solar firsthand on their rooftops. If not them, then their retired parents or their neighbours or their community group. I'm pleased to say that the Clean Energy Finance Corporation has not been abolished. And there's a bill in the federal parliament called the Clean Energy Finance Corporation Abolition Bill, right? And I've got to say that saving those two institutions was probably one of the proudest things that I've been involved with in this role. We had to absolutely capture the support of the crossbench senators. We needed at least 3 of those little small parties, those senators, to actually vote with us to stop those institutions being closed. And so we had to work hard, and we did. We worked hard with Ricky Muir from the Motoring Enthusiast Party. He gets it. With Glenn Lazarus, been a fantastic supporter for solar, and with Dio Wong from the Palm United Party in Western Australia, again a great supporter. So we did it, and we saved them by 1 vote. You know, if I leave that as a legacy, then I'd be really pleased that our organisation has achieved exactly that. You might be pleased to know that we're actually starting to build some positive working relationships with the Turnbull government. We're once again working with Minister Hunt's office, who has responsibility for solar policy. We have close contacts across the government and across the parliament. We've just announced 3 inaugural patrons of the Australian Solar Council: Dr. John Hewson, former opposition leader and leader of the Liberal Party; Christine Milne, former leader of the Australian Greens; and Simon Corbell, who's the current Deputy Chief Minister, Environment Minister and Energy Minister in the ACT, and a pioneer of the large-scale reverse auctions process that's now being used elsewhere. I'll talk about that in a sec. And it's fantastic. I mean, we are a non-partisan organisation. We will support any party that supports good solar policy. And we built a coalition from Clive Palmer to Christine Milne when she was in the job. You know, so this isn't about politics, this is about policy, and we will always fight in the best interests of our industry. Last Friday, actually, we took Senators Lionhelm and Wong on a trip to Forbes. We visited Vast Solar's large concentrating solar thermal power plant that incorporates molten salt storage. And they were really fascinated about what's happening with energy storage and wanted to see this firsthand. And I've got to say, he's not here, so I can say this. Our national president, Steve Bloom, gets a gold medal because he spent 4 hours driving the bus up there and 4 hours driving the bus back, and had to bite his tongue at some of the things that he was hearing in the back of the van. But a good education process, so definitely worthwhile. We were instrumental in ensuring that the Federal Labor Party adopted a policy of 50% renewables by 2030. And we provide a lot of ongoing advice to several large political parties, so not just to the Labor Party. In Queensland, we played a pivotal role, encouraging the new government to put solar policy at the heart of its program. Now, as you know, they also have a plan to deliver 50% renewables by 2030. Several large-scale solar auctions are underway right here in Queensland. Fantastic news. And for the first time, there's a full and fair-minded review into the price of exported solar power. Not a windfall, unsustainable feed-in tariff, and not a punitive, well, you should go and negotiate a rate with your retailer, right? But let's actually have an open and full investigation. That's what's happening. We also work almost daily with the governments of South Australia, New South Wales, Victoria, ACT and elsewhere. So back to the federal level, I'm pleased to say that the tone has definitely changed under Prime Minister Turnbull. The war against solar is over. There are no new bushfires being lit every time that we turn around. The Prime Minister's positive language is making a difference. We're starting to see large global investors look at this market once again, and as of last year, they'd fled. I mean, they'd just fled the scene. There was no way that they could invest. And so that's really positive. However, we contend that more needs to be done. The Prime Minister told his party room that he would not reverse the anti-solar and anti-climate policies of his predecessor. And we think that's a bit rough. I mean, why should our industry be the price that the people of Australia have to pay to get someone decent as Prime Minister, right? Why do we have to be the price for that? Now, I don't think that's right. I know that he doesn't believe that that's right. He understands this stuff well. And so we've got to, on one hand, we've got to encourage him and push him to make the change. On the other hand, we've got to be sensitive because we know inside his own party, there are plenty of people who'd love to tear him down on this issue. This has become a proxy for a factional war inside the Liberal Party. And so we've got to kind of, we're on a bit of a tightrope. But it's a sophisticated response, and that's what we need to do. That's what this calls for, and so that's what we'll continue to do. I'm also told that the Liberal Party will take some pro-solar policies to the next federal election. That's encouraging. We'll have to wait and see what those end up being. But the ultimate test for us must always be what a government does, not what it says. With a federal election that could be as little as 4 or 5 months away, and it will definitely be held next year, 2016, we know that we have to put the pressure on and keep them honest, basically, in the process. Another issue that, though, the whole political issue is not the only thing that we're facing. The other thing which is a problem is the network connection approvals. I've talked to one member in North Queensland dealing with Ergon, and they tell me they've had 1,000 PV connection applications approvals lost. There's been 1,000 of them that have been lost, right? And that's just staggering. And so there are a lot of sort of non-official ways in which our industry can be frustrated. And I know there's been a lot of frustration, for example, around the fact that there hasn't been a set fee for having a look at a connection approval, particularly a larger scale system. And so you go through this process, you don't know what you're going to pay, you don't know how long the process is going to take, and you don't know what the outcome's going to be at the end of it. Well, that's fantastic. That's great business certainty for you and your customer, isn't it? So we saw in Western Australia, Synergy announced this week that it was coming out with a new tariff specifically for solar owners, which was going to be a premium retail tariff to claw back the lost revenues as a result of people going solar. It's outrageous. So it's not. So I've got to say that the work's not over. It just means that we can focus on some other really pressing issues for our industry and not just be fighting for our very survival, which is what it's been for the last couple of years. And I want to work closely with you to harness those stories, particularly where you can give me concrete examples of where you're dealing with the utilities and it's just been, it's just not fair. Because we do have a good relationship with the Queensland Government. We have access at the highest levels. And I want to take these back as concrete examples. I don't want to talk in general terms, and I want them to actually start some investigations and take some action. So that's the other thing that we need to do. In the lead up to Paris, we have a great opportunity to tell a positive story about solar. The debate globally has been framed, if you take action on climate change, yeah, that's great, but it's really expensive. And so we have to keep doing what we've always done because we want to save money and protect our economy. That's the frame, that's the debate, right? Well, we know in our industry that is simply wrong. We can deliver economic outcomes, greater competitiveness, job creation, lower electricity bills, competition, right? And, oh, by the way, as a throwaway, we're going to save the planet at the same time. So we are proof, living proof, that it's not an either-or debate. It's actually these things are both. And so we as an industry need to raise our voice to say, no, we have a vision for a better Australia, Australia where we're smarter, where we have great jobs, where we have a good standard of living, and we can protect the environment at the same time. So that's a message that would be great for everybody to sort of get behind. The Australian Solar Council. So today, the Solar Council is more influential than I ever could have imagined when I took the job in 2008. We have a serious media profile. I'd average at least one major media interview a day. And in fact, the next one's happening in about 15 minutes with the people of Perth. Politicians at all levels know who we are. What we do and say really matters. So apparently we've got their attention. I often get phone calls from leaders of the big parties or from leaders at state government level who want to pick our brains on solar policy before they announce it publicly. Two things: they want to make sure that they're kind of on the money, but secondly, they want to make sure that we're on side. Because if we're not, then they know they're going to have a sales problem. And that's exactly, as an industry, where you want to be. You want to be inside that decision-making circle, and I'm very pleased to say that today, our industry, in our organisation, is absolutely in that place. We are the voice of the solar industry, from the solar industry, for the solar industry. We are not conflicted by other agendas. We're a highly democratic organisation. One member, one vote. We have 9 volunteer board directors made up directly out of different parts of the solar industry right across Australia. I'd like to acknowledge one of our directors, Anthony Sachs from Queensland, Infinity Solar, with us here today. But we have that from across the nation. So we are solar for solar. We employ about 8 staff across the country. We've got almost 1,000 members in every state and territory. That makes us Australia's largest renewable energy industry body. In terms of profile, we continue to punch well above our weight. For those of you who are members, thank you. For those who aren't, now's a fantastic time to join. Get involved. Join and support the organisation that supports you. This really matters for us. We compete with for-profit companies who produce magazines, hold conferences and events, and like to masquerade as industry representatives. For-profit companies, right? Their objective is to maximise the financial return so their directors can go on holiday to Switzerland every year. We are a not-for-profit organisation from the industry. We do these things to actually maximise income so we can reinvest it into our industry and collectively grow our market together. I'd like to say a few words about the Energy Storage Council. 2015 has also been an watershed year there as well. Today we have over 65 members. We were founded in September 2014. So basically any company that's doing anything of any seriousness in energy storage is a member of the Energy Storage Council. You can see some of our gold members and our silver members up on the screen. And here are some of our bronze members as well. Today we're working with members to tackle 2 pressing issues. I've got a couple of slides here courtesy of Glenn Morris, our National Vice President. But this is some fantastic access control and mechanical protection for your battery storage system. That's great. This one here, Glenn tells me no battery fuses, no battery isolator, no mechanical protection, no supportive cables, no clue. But hands down and away, this one here is my favourite. This is fantastic because I'll tell you why. Can you see the gap there between the 2 battery cells, right? That's where he parks his bicycle. Actually, for us, this is a big problem. It's not just a problem for our technicians, right? For you actually working on these systems, that they need to be safe, right? Because we don't want to put our people at risk. It has to be safe for householders. And the thing that worries me is actually first responders. You know, we're going to send our fireys or our AMBOs into a situation where they don't know that there's a battery system on the premises. It might be lithium-ion, might be something else, but it might be something that won't appreciate it if you come and pour water on it, right? Might make things way worse and might emit some toxic gases that might actually kill you in the process, right? So we have a duty of care responsibility. Now, there is a a gap in Australian standards, so we're responding to that. There was a question earlier from Century UASA about exactly that. So the Energy Storage Council is about to announce an industry best practice program in 3 parts. The first is a whitelist of appropriate products. Actually have a look at the inherent safety of the products that are being offered. Right? 2, we want our retailers to sign up to a commitment to fair sales representation. In solar, the worst story I heard was actually an elderly retired woman who had been told by the salesman that her solar system was going to produce quite well on a cloudless night with a full moon. Right? I mean, you know about this, right? This is what you do, right? Well, imagine the scope for, I mean, not what you do, but what you hear, right? But imagine the scope for that kind of nonsense in the energy storage space, where people are sold just lies, right? And so what that will do, it will evaporate the trust that the community and governments have in our industry. It'll just disappear. So we need to be honest and forthright about what it is that we can provide, and provide that honest advice. Third is that we need a best practice guide for installation and maintenance of systems. Our best practice guide, which is about that thick, is currently about to circulate for member comment. And I'd like to just do a shout out to Peter Coburn in Adelaide, who's actually sat down and done the hard work of actually breaking the back and writing that in the first place. That's a bloody big job. And guess what? He got paid for it? No, he did it because he knew that it has to be done. And that's the guide that will circulate amongst our membership to make sure that we've got it right and that we can collectively sign up to it as a voluntary industry code, because that's the best we can do. The Australian standards will take 2 years before anything, even if everybody agrees, right? So we need an interim, and it's our job to market to the public to say, energy storage is too important just to leave alone, right? You can either deal with professionals who are committed to a safe, sustainable industry, or you can deal with somebody else, right? But you're kind of taking your life in your own hands if you choose to deal with people who aren't prepared to sign up to these sorts of standards. That'll be our role. The Energy Storage Conference was held in May and September this year. It was really interesting. We had 4,000 delegates at the event in May, and 1,500 of them registered for energy storage. That's extraordinary. Almost half the delegates registered for the energy storage stream. It featured over 30 presentations, including from people like Sumitomo Electric, Enphase Energy, DNGVL. It was sponsored by Enphase. In October, we launched our Global Energy Storage Report, and we worked with peak bodies in California, in India, China, and other organisations. This is really interesting. If you haven't seen this, it's definitely worth a look. Directory.energystorage.org.au. We've put up there a directory of everybody involved in the energy storage business. So we've got a category. I'm looking for a consultant who does large-scale off-grid system design. Well, they're on there. I'm looking for, for microgrid, larger scale energy storage. It's on there. I'm looking for products that I can put behind the meter for residential storage. So we've got over 60 suppliers and products currently linked. If your product is not listed there, please contact us. We want to make this the go-to reference for our industry so that people can have a good listing of what is available. Strategic partnerships. We've formally entered into partnerships around the world, the US, China, India. We collaborate with the Europeans and the Californians. To finish, I just wanted to tell you about a couple of events in 2016. The first is to just let you know that our magazine, you might have just got it in your postbox actually, has just been rebranded Solar and Storage. The storage component of that has grown significantly. On the 17th of February, we're holding an Energy Storage Council one-day conference here in Brisbane at the Hilton Hotel. We're doing it in conjunction with the Queensland Government, and we're looking at how Queensland is becoming the smart energy storage space. We noticed that already there are long-term companies that are actually based in Queensland Century Yuasa is a great example of that. But we have other companies that are basing in Queensland, and there's some great research going on here as well. So I think Queensland actually has the ability to steal a march on everybody in this and actually position itself as a centre of excellence for energy storage. The Energy Minister will keynote along with the Science Minister. There are limited sponsorship opportunities available. If you're interested in sponsoring, please see Lorraine at the end of this. We're doing part 2 of our 4777 workshops, Glen Morris, coming around in February. We'll talk to about 1,000 installers around the country when we do that. And once again, we're looking for some sponsorship, and very happy to say that, and thank you to Supply Partners for helping us out with that one as well. On the 16th of March, we're holding a Energy Storage Meets Parliament Day. I want to get as many energy storage members as possible to come to Parliament House in Canberra. It's being hosted by Senator Dio Wong from the Palm United Party and Linda Reynolds from the Liberal Party. And we're actually talking to the crossbench, cross-party group on innovation and science. We want to educate them. You'll be able to showcase your products. And then we're going to split into working groups. And we're actually going to go and meet with as many members and senators as possible to actually educate them about this stuff and tell them about the interest that there really is in the community for what we're doing. I think that will be helpful in setting the agenda and educating them. I want to show you a very short video, and before I do this, just see how many people you can recognise from Solar 2015 this year held in Melbourne.
It's an industry-leading exhibition, and we want to be involved.
It's a great way to catch up with a lot of our clients who also come here.
We want to show the latest model of our products. We want to present the Australian customers about our new service and solutions.
We wanted to talk to the people who have been seriously involved in the industry for many, many years.
Hi, it's Kirsty from the Australian Solar Council. I'm one of the event organisers here at Solar 2015. We're here in Melbourne at the Melbourne Convention Centre.
We're using this exhibition as a platform to get out there, show people our new products, people to get excited about what we're doing.
It's the end of day one. It's been a great day. Last year we had 2,500 people come through our doors, and at the end of day one we already are looking to beat those targets.
It's a great place for us to advertise our business. We talk directly to installers and solar companies, and it's just a great place to be.
To push and just demonstrate our Bosch products onto the Australian market.
Our exhibition space is sold out, and all our exhibitors seem really happy with the people they've met and the contacts they've made.
To promote our business, to grow our brand awareness, to get new customers and to have a good time.
We've had 3 streams of presentations. We've had an industry and policy session, we've had an energy storage session for the first time ever, and we've also had our professional development session put on by SIA.
Great speakers, and there's been a great range of exhibitors as well.
Anything from your solar monitoring, your batteries, your inverters, your racking, and also obviously your panel distribution.
We've had a lot of different people come through our doors today from all different sections of the industry and from the public.
These are the key decision makers. These are people that are passionate about the solar and renewable industry.
That's probably one of our main purposes of the Australian Solar Council, to facilitate and create a good meeting ground for different people to interact with each other.
And you never know, you might get that one lead that makes it all worth it.
The key dates to keep in mind for next year are Wednesday the 4th and Thursday the 5th of May 2016. I do get your emails and I do read them. Right? When you say, when's it coming to Brisbane? There is a possibility in the future we could do that. We do make it free to attend. I do know it's a big cost to go down to Melbourne to do that. So, I'm listening, I suppose, is what I'm here to say, right? And we'll see what we can do in the future. But coming along to that event, I think is fantastic. Most of the sponsorship now has been sold, I'm pleased to say. A couple available, but most of it's sold. In fact, Liam, you're doing the coffee carts, I think. Where is he? Up the back. There you go. This is the exhibition floor. We put the sessions on the floor so that people don't have to take a cut lunch and go somewhere else to actually go and attend a session. And there's a fantastic buzz on the floor for everybody sort of is all together. You'll see that most of the exhibition space is sold. There are some booths left, so if you're interested in exhibiting, it's the place to be. To finish, I'd like to thank you for your fantastic support this year. When we blew the whistle and called you out, you responded in droves, actually, right across Queensland. It was fantastic. I'd also like to thank the fantastic staff at the Australian Solar Council and the Energy Storage Council. Lorraine, you've been absolutely fantastic, dynamo to actually drive the Energy Storage Council forward. So thank you for your hard work. If you're not a member, I hope that I've given you some good reasons to join. Members direct where we focus our attention. I hope that everyone has an absolutely fantastic Christmas and New Year, comes back refreshed, ready to hit it out of the park when it comes to battery systems in 2016, and take advantage of the opportunities that provides. Thank you. Now, Vince, where's Vince? Here he is. Okay, so I'd like to introduce now Vince Garoni from the University of Queensland as our guest presenter. Vince is going to give us a short presentation, and you'll be pleased to know that after that, it's a drinks time, right? So, welcome, Vince.
Thanks, John. Thank you. I suppose after that, everyone was expecting to have a break and go straight to drinks, so I apologise for those who were really thirsty. Look, as John has introduced, we've got a small group here who are looking at research, and we've just completed a 3.3 megawatt solar farm out at Gatton. So I'll try and be brief and give you a quick summary of that, some of the challenges we've faced in getting that up, and some of the research we hope to do. Gatton campus is 80 kilometres west of here. We've recently put 3.3 megawatts. It's connected on the 11 kV grid. And that was one of the big issues for us. Energex were a little bit uncomfortable with connecting at 11 kV. They wanted a 33 kV connection. And, I'm well aware that many of you have faced enormous challenges getting connections for small systems. I can tell you it was quite a big challenge to get a connection at 3.3 megawatts. The size of the system, and I won't go to all the details, we've got 5 large subarrays, each on 720 kVA SMA inverters. There are 7,200 First Solar panels on each of those. 3 of those arrays are fixed. 1 is a single axis array and 1 is a dual axis array. There is also another smaller 125 kilowatt array which is still to be connected. So what we've ended up with is the dual axis array is quite large and spaced out, and that uses a German designed Daiger energy tracking system. Each of those has about 45 panels on them. The 3 fixed axes in orange and the single axis in pink. And what that looks like in reality is something like that. So it's quite impressive when you see it. The fixed axis is up here, third one down there. You can see the dual axis over in the distance and the single axis is. So it's quite a nice site. You can drive out there at any time and actually drive around the site. It's not locked off, at least at this stage. So you can get a bit of an idea of what it looks like. That's the fixed axis arrays close up. The panels are all thin film, so they're only 95 watts each with a thin film cadmium telluride. It uses galvanised piers into the ground. I'll show you a few details later on. There's a long beam along here, so that each of those is about 200 metres long. And of course, one of the things you have to think about in a design like that is with thermal expansion, that thing can expand by almost 4 inches, 90 millimetres or so. The panels are clipped in, so on. Single axis arrays are somewhat different. I wish I had a better picture of that actually, but they are laid out in a quite different configuration. It's a fairly cost-effective design as far as it's been engineered for. It hasn't been over-engineered, let's put it that way. I was out there one day in 70-kilometre-hour winds, and we were a bit reluctant to stand downwind of the arrays. They were moving quite a bit, so it's a different ball game. And of course, the dual-axis arrays, which always look the most impressive, and as I said, they're embedded on a large block of concrete. a 340 mil, I think, post out of the ground, and you can see a couple of little sensors on the sides there which detect the sunlight, and they activate the drives to orient both tilt and azimuth to give optimum tracking. The utility concerns, there was a whole list of them, but I'll just focus on two: voltage regulation and power factor. One of the benefits I had, I was previously the power quality manager at Energex, so I had a bit of an understanding of what their problems were and perhaps some of the weaknesses and the arguments that they might put back. One of the first things we did is we did quite a lot of calculations to look at the expected changes in voltage on the campus for different configurations or different conditions on site, different loads, different generations, different power factors, the sort of things that might bother them. And the reality was that even with solar, there really wasn't much of a change compared to no solar at all. And we were quite confident that even on that piece of rural network, that we didn't think we were going to have too many problems with maintaining the voltage on the network. We had a lot of argy-bargy in those discussions, and I guess one of the take-homes for all of you guys, particularly if you move up into a larger segment of the market, is that we did ultimately agree that we wouldn't raise the voltage by more than about 1%. But before we agreed to that, we got Energex to agree that they would hold the voltage between the blue and the red, which is only about 2.5%. So that was quite an achievement. As you probably realise, across the network, the utilities are allowed in Queensland a 10% variation on the 11 kV, the 11,000 volt network. That's quite a wide range, and they need that wide range, but they don't want to be varying that range at any point on the network. And in fact, they still need to be controlling it fairly tightly at any particular point. So Energex ultimately agreed to hold the voltage within 2.5%. And when we come on, we've agreed not to raise it by any more than 1% above that. These agreements are all on the web, by the way, and we've done that so that people can use them as a precedent. I didn't actually include the link, but if you search my name and connection agreement, I think you'll find it. And the way we've managed that is by using power factor correction. So this is, and I apologise for the technical aspects of this, but for those who are familiar, at high voltages, we consume reactive power. At low voltages, we will produce reactive power and essentially support the network. I guess one of the key things, though, is in the mid-range that we're concerned about, we will try and hold unity power factor. And this is something I think the utilities are moving away from at the moment, which I feel is a mistake. They're starting to create, since earlier this year, the new connection standard in Queensland is trying to drive people for configuring the inverters to 0.9, and I'm sure that a lot of inverter manufacturers will do that by default. I don't believe that's a good thing, because if you consider it, at the same time they've introduced a tariff to charge commercial customers for consuming reactive power. On one hand, they're saying it's bad, we're going to charge you for doing it. On the other hand, they're telling the PV installation industry, it's good, you better do it. You can't have both policies side by side. One of the consequences of consuming reactive power in the inverters is that someone will have to supply it. Someone will have to install capacitors on the substations, or generators will have to run in a fashion that can supply it. That will cost money, and guess who will end up paying for that? The other one was power factor. The studies we did showed that for quite a lot of the time, we would run at power factors well below the 0.9 that's required under the legislation. The legislation does, however, give the utility discretion to allow for lower values. We argued that battle, and we ended up agreeing that they would look at the power factor associated with our generation and the power factor associated with our load as separate things. So we will control both of those within 0.9, even though the total will become quite poor at times. But the fact that it's quite poor is insignificant because it's fairly low magnitudes. Okay, panel failures. One of the things we have suffered on site is we've suffered a number of panel failures. The manufacturer supplies graphs showing the rates of failure over a period of time. That's a 5-year axis on the graph. I can't show you the numbers because they're confidential, unfortunately, but it's interesting to see that over various years of manufacturers, they show increasing failures, which you would expect from any manufacturer. We've suffered quite a few, however, in the first 6 to 8 months of operation, and they're not always easy to see. If you look at that panel there, you can see a very slight deflection there. And in fact, that was the very first panel we realised had failed, and it was picked up by looking along the array and seeing a slightly different reflection in the panels. You really can't see much on that at all, except a slight bit of discoloration at the front. And that's what the back of that panel looks like, and you can see that it's shattered. And we've suffered a number of panels which have completely crazed on the back. We really don't know why at this point in time, but they're being replaced under warranty. Of course, we've also suffered other failures which are a little bit more obvious. I would like to think that that large array out there is serving the purpose of detecting meteorite impacts. I do suspect, though, that it was a stone from a mower. And that's what that looks like close up. One of the things we've done out there, because they're cadmium telluride panels, is before we did anything with that, we sealed it with a spray just to make sure that there wasn't any possibility of leaching. I'm led to believe that there isn't a problem with that, but you know, until you get totally familiar with these things, it doesn't hurt to be a little bit belt and braces. The dual axis trackers have posed a few challenges. If you look at the picture at the back, you'll see the circle unit is not actually facing the same way as all the others. Those trackers have quite a few cables running up through the mast, and in the middle of that you'll see a limit switch which is designed to actually tell the tracker when it's reached the end of the travel. That particular one's actually installed in the wrong spot. It's actually supposed to be on the outside of that boomerang rather than the inside. But what we did find was happening with them is that all these cables running up through the middle were fouling the limit switch and causing it to stop. And as a result of that, unfortunately, our dual axis array has been stowed since March and is still waiting remedy. So that has proved an interesting challenge. Another thing that's probably worth noting is that the array out there are all negatively earthed. And unlike the unearthed systems that you're familiar with your transformerless inverters, these larger systems have different configurations. One of the things we particularly insisted upon in our installation was that our inverter be provided with the capability to check the insulation each morning. So that's an AS5033 requirement, which particularly now that the new 5033 only applies up to 240 kilowatts, larger arrays will not have to have that requirement, but we insisted upon it. So each morning the inverter looks at the positive and the negative. If there's any leakage to ground, it says, I'm not going to start off today. Another interesting thing is that you know, some of these larger systems which won't have to comply with 5033 may only tend to use single pole isolators. Now, if you think about that, with the negative earthed, if you have a contactor frame, you've now got a potentially live frame if the earth isn't in place. At least if you've got a double pole isolation, you've removed the earth return path on the negative, you've made it a little bit safer. So that was something we insisted upon. One of the other interesting things when you have got a large number of strings in parallel, and we've got 480 strings in parallel on each inverter, is that if you do have a fault to ground, the fuse will blow, but from backfeed from the other strings. And once that fuse is blown, your single string that's faulted continues to feed into a fault. It's not cleared, it stays there. And it's something that you know, people don't expect. Most of us who have gone through the ranks of working with AC circuits and so forth, if there's a fault, you expect it to be cleared. With these systems, they're not cleared, and it will stay there at least until the following day when the inverter checks the insulation. So We've also got some interesting earthing arrangements. You'll see going from clockwise, we have a single earth on the fixed axis arrays. It's coupled to the horizontal beam by some spring locks, which allow for some lateral movement. That is then coupled along the whole array by some beam connectors, which are held in place by self-tapping or self-drilling screws, which are something that in the smaller systems we're certainly discouraged from doing. 5033, in fact, says that that's not to be done. And finally, the tables themselves arrive in a folded fashion, which mean that the cross rails are actually pivoting on a bolt, which is another unusual method of earthing. So it remains to be seen how they handle long term. So research, and this is the final slide, so don't panic. We've got a number of researchers who are looking at different things. We've got Dr. Jan Allam, who's come to us from Wollongong, who's looking at the battery storage capabilities. We've got a 760 kilowatt hour battery arriving shortly, lithium, and he's looking at what we can do in the control functions to mitigate variability of PV and how we can improve the plant utilisation by load shaving. We've got another engineering doctorate, Rufang Yan, who's looking at the impact of large-scale PV integration on networks and looking at developing advanced control methodology for that. And we also have economists working on things as well, and Dr. Phil Wild in the audience is looking at the overall impact of these large-scale PVs on the network. So he's looking at Broken Hill and Ningen's PV farms, which AGL have installed, looking at the impact of that on the national electricity market, and looking at how further growth in PV will also affect the market. Okay, thank you very much for that. Appreciate your time.